Chapter 11:17. Azura Blood Arena. Sirs, you are. Tu Yu hurriedly lifted his right foot, which was stepping on Shawshank, and bowed to Zhuowen and Xiang. Tu Yu's cultivation was only at the initial stage of the Golden Exalt stage. Forget about Xiang, even Zhuowen could crush him with one hand. Tu Yu naturally did not dare to be impudent in front of Zhuowen and Xiang, who both exuded terrifying auras. Shawshank hurriedly got up and came to Zhuowen's side in a somewhat sorry state. He said somewhat angrily, "Sirs, the map that I bought for you was torn apart by this Tu Yu, and the remaining spirit stones were also snatched away by him." You tore up the map and took the spirit stones? Hearing this, Zhuowen's gaze fell on Tu Yu. His slow voice was filled with a terrifying chill, causing Shawshank's eyelids to twitch. He hurriedly smiled and said, "Sirs, this lowly one has eyes but failed to recognize Mount Tai. I did not know that Shawshank was sent by you. Otherwise, I would not have dared to do this even if I had 100 guts." "Destroy your own cultivation." Jun calmly spat out these words. Tu Yu's face instantly turned pale, and he could not help but take a few steps back. "Sirs, I am a member of the Splashing Blood Gang. I can hand over everything I have. Can you let me live?" Tu Yu said in a low voice. "Destroy your own cultivation, or bear the consequences," Zhuowen calmly said. In an instant, the atmosphere in the open space became extremely solemn. The surrounding onlookers quickly distanced themselves. Zhuowen and Xiang's auras were very powerful, and they did not want to get involved in this mess. Tu Yu's expression finally changed. His eyes flickered, and he suddenly stomped his foot, fleeing in the opposite direction. Tu Yu knew better than anyone what kind of place Azura City was. In such a chaotic city, if one had no cultivation, it was undoubtedly a fate worse than death. Therefore, he would not destroy his own cultivation. "Xiang," Zhuowen said in an indifferent voice. Standing behind him, Xiang flicked his right finger. A purple force shot out from his finger like a cannonball and instantly caught up with the fleeing Tu Yu. "Ah!" A miserable shriek resounded. Immediately, the purple force that made contact with Tu Yu's body suddenly erupted into purple flames, instantly devouring Tu Yu's entire body. Many people's eyes turned cold as they stared at the figure that had been incinerated by the purple flames in the distance. They stared at Zhuowen and Xiang with fear. Tu Yu was at the initial Golden Exalt stage after all. Yet, he had been annihilated in a single move. This was truly shocking. Shawshank, who was standing beside Zhuowen, was trembling all over. In a sense, Tu Yu was a powerhouse that he had to look up to. However, such a powerhouse that he used to look up to had now been killed with a flick of a finger. He knew very well how terrifying the two people in front of him were. "Hurry up and buy the map. We'll wait for you at the inn." Zhuowen threw down another high-grade spirit stone and instructed indifferently. Then he left with Xiang, leaving behind the crowd that was looking at each other in dismay. Under the envious gazes of the crowd, Shawshank stepped back into the luxurious shop. Obviously, the fact that Shawshank, who was merely at the initial Golden Exalt stage, was able to climb up the ranks of Zhuowen and Xiang was like a pie that had fallen from the sky. As for Tu Yu, no one gave it much thought. Although Tu Yu was a member of the Splashing Blood Gang, he was merely an outer disciple. The Splashing Blood Gang would not mobilize so many people to offend a powerhouse that was suspected to be at the Emperor stage for an outer disciple. Not long after, Shawshank returned to the inn and handed the map to Zhuowen. Zhuowen casually instructed Shawshank and sent him away. At the same time, he booked 2 rooms in the inn and planned to stay there first. "Master." Before Shawshank left, he said that there will be a large-scale auction at the Jianing auction house in a month. "Does Master plan to go?" In the corridor, Xiang suddenly asked Zhuowen. "Of course I'm going. Strange treasures frequently appear on Azura Island. Perhaps I can obtain what I need at the auction." Zhuowen's eyes flickered as he said. After the two returned to the room, Zhuowen set up a soundproof restriction in the room. With a flick of his finger, he took out a sparkling white longsword and handed it to Xiang. "This is an emperor weapon?" Xiang was startled when he received the longsword. Soon after, his eyes revealed a look of disbelief. "This sword is called the Carefree Sword. I obtained it from the Carefree sect in West Path City. It's a low-grade Emperor weapon. Take it and use it first. Zhuowen said indifferently. Xiang's eyes revealed a look of pleasant surprise. Soon after, he revealed a trace of hesitation and said, Master, an Emperor weapon is so precious, yet you gave it to me. Zhuowen waved his hand and said, Azura Island is extremely chaotic and there are many Emperor Realm Masters. Perhaps we will encounter some trouble later. You have just advanced to the Emperor Realm and your strength isn't too strong. If you have an Emperor weapon, then your strength will surpass that of an ordinary first-layer Emperor Realm Master. It will be of great help to me. Ziyang was startled, but he didn't hesitate to accept the Carefree sword. What Zhuowen said was right. Azura Island was extremely chaotic, and there might really be endless troubles waiting for them. If they didn't have enough strength, they might suffer a calamity. Zhuowen's actions were only a precautionary measure. Moreover, Zhuowen's cultivation was only at the early Heavenly Master realm. He couldn't display the power of the Carefree sword. In addition, Nguyen had a high-grade Emperor weapon like the Slaughter Abstinence Violation Blade in his spirit ring. Therefore, he didn't care too much about the Carefree sword. Go back to your room and refine the Carefree sword. 1 month later, after the Jianing auction house's auction, we will go in. Zhuowen said lightly. Ziyang nodded and left the room. On the other hand, Zhuowen's gaze flickered as he sat upright on the wooden chair in the room and muttered to himself in deep thought. Back then, Master Mu Feng said that the 1,000-fold fossil is in the Azura Blood Arena. I wonder where it is? You can go take a look at the Azura Blood Arena. In any case, don't you have the map of Azura City? Xiao Hei's lazy voice sounded. You're right. I have to go take a look at the Azura Blood Arena. At the same time, I have to inquire about the whereabouts of the 1,000-fold fossil. But it's already late, so I'll talk about it tomorrow. The night passed in silence. The next day, Zhuowen woke up early. He pushed open the door and headed straight for the Azura Blood Arena. Xiang needed to refine the Carefree sword, so Zhuowen didn't let him follow him. With the map provided by Shawshank, Zhuowen was like a fish in water in Azura City. Soon, he arrived at the Azura Blood Arena. It was a huge circular arena that covered an area of dozens of miles. Thick blood pillars that were nearly 100 feet tall supported the huge circular arena. The moment he approached the Azura Blood Arena, Zhuowen could faintly hear the tsunami-like clamor coming from the Azura Blood Arena. Around the Azura Blood Arena, there were dozens of blood-colored passageways. Each passageway was guarded by 2 powerful martial warriors. At this moment, every passageway was lined up like a dragon. They should be spectators waiting to enter the Azura Blood Arena. Zhuowen did not enter. Instead, he stood outside and took out a communication jade symbol paper, summoning Shawshank from yesterday. After all, the latter was a native of Azura City, so he naturally had to ask Shawshank about the Azura Blood Arena. Not long later, Shawshank arrived beside Zhuowen and bowed. Sir, I wonder why you've summoned this lowly one? Shawshank, have you heard of the 1,000-fold fossil? Zhuowen suddenly asked. 1,000-fold fossil? Shawshank was startled, and then carefully asked, Sir, could it be that you want this 1,000-fold fossil? Seeing Shawshank's expression, Zhuowen frowned and nodded. Yes. Is there a problem with it? Actually, there's no problem. It's just that this 1,000-fold fossil has another name. It's called the blood crystal source. It's the essence of the blood crystal vein, and this blood crystal source only appears every time the Azura Island's source erupts. In other words, if you want to obtain this 1,000-fold fossil, you can only obtain it 2 months later when the island's source erupts. Shawshank said softly. The 1,000-fold fossil is the source of the blood crystal? Zhuowen was startled. He immediately thought of the blood-red crystal during the Divine Academy's test. At that time, Cheng Dong had told him that it was called the blood crystal and came from Azura Island. In other words, the only way to obtain the blood crystal on Azura Island was through the Azura Blood Arena? No wonder the testers said that he risked his life to obtain the blood crystal. The rules of the Azura Blood Arena were so cruel that it felt like one was risking their life. Sir, if you want to participate in the island's source battle 2 months later, you must register at the Azura Blood Arena. This is because the Azura Blood Arena is located at the center of Azura Island. If the island's source erupts, it will erupt from the Azura Blood Arena. Shawshank said with a flattering smile. Register? Zhuan asked with some doubt. Shawshank smiled embarrassedly. He knew that Zhuan didn't understand at all. He could only patiently explain. The so-called registration is actually the qualifications you have in the Azura Blood Arena. In the Azura Blood Arena, if you obtain 3 consecutive victories or more, you will be awarded the Azura Medal. Only cultivators with the Azura Medal are qualified to participate in the island's source battle 2 months later. Hearing this, Zhuowen's eyes revealed a look of understanding. It seemed that the island's source battle wasn't something that could be casually participated in. Thinking of this, Yun walked straight to the entrance. Shawshank followed closely behind. After paying a certain fee, the two entered the Azura Blood Arena. After walking out of the dark corridor, Zhuowen's ears became clearer and clearer. These sounds were like rolling thunder, echoing in Zhuowen's ears. Chapter 11:18. Instant kill. Zhuowen and Shawshank's arrival did not attract anyone's attention. The two of them only looked around before finding a spot in the stands and casually sitting down. In the middle of the viewing gallery surrounding the Azura Blood Arena was an extremely large piece of yellow land. Many blood-colored platforms were situated on this piece of land. There were approximately 10 of them. On each platform, there were 2 figures that were continuously fighting each other, erupting with extremely intense Yuan power forces. Sir, the rules for entering the Azura Blood Arena are actually very simple. As long as you are mentally prepared and have the courage, you can directly go up from the stands and fight with others. If you can win 3 matches in a row, you can obtain the Azura Medal. Shawshank whispered to Zhuan. So that's how it is. Zhuan nodded. His gaze landed on the 10 figures that were constantly fighting below. Below each blood-colored stand stood a blood-robed person with a stern expression. Clearly, these blood-robed people were the referees. Bang! A muffled groan rang out. On one of the stands, the 2 people who were originally fighting immediately separated upon contact. Soon after, one of them was violently sent flying, landing outside the blood-colored stand. At the same time, a terrifying force swept over and swept into the body of the figure that was sent flying. A miserable shriek rang out as the figure actually exploded into a cloud of blood mist, losing all signs of life. This match is Diba's victory. Congratulations to Diba for winning 3 matches in a row. This is your Azura Medal, take it well. Below the blood-colored stand, the blood-robed person said in a clear voice. Soon after, he waved his sleeve and a blood-colored medal flew out, landing on the arrogant and domineering figure on the stage. Diba! Looking at the figure on the stage who had won 3 matches in a row, Zhuowen's eyes narrowed. He did not expect that Diba, who was known as the Emperor Pavilion, would actually come to Azura Island. Clearly, he was planning to seize Azura Island's island source. Who is this Diba? I've never heard of him before. He actually won 3 matches in a row so easily. When the blood-robed man awarded the Imperial Tyrant Azura Medal, the audience burst into an uproar. Many people were puzzled by the unfamiliar face of the Imperial Tyrant. It seems that this Diba is very confident in himself. He actually came to Azura Island to seize the island's source energy. Looking at the domineering Diba on the stage, Zhuowen's eyes revealed a trace of contemplation. After obtaining 3 consecutive victories, Diba did not continue to challenge. Instead, he directly left the blood-colored platform and entered the exit in front of the platform. Clearly, he did not plan to stay in the Azura Blood Arena. After all, Diba's goal was the same as Zhuowen's. He only needed to obtain 3 consecutive victories and obtain the Azura Medal. There was no need for him to waste so much time here. After all of the experts who could come to this place were rather difficult to deal with. On the off chance that he encountered an expert, he would have to expose his trump cards. It wouldn't do him any good in the origin struggle 2 months later. Hence, it was best to quit while he was ahead. Shawshank, why aren't there any battles between Emperor Realm cultivators in the Azura Blood Field? Zhuowen suddenly asked. Hearing this, Shawshank looked at Zhuowen strangely and said, My lord. Emperor realm experts are basically tyrants. How could they possibly come to the Azura blood field to fight? Normally, those who come to fight are below the Emperor realm. Hearing this, Zhuan also understood. Although there were many Emperor realm cultivators in the Sea of Bitterness, there were at most less than 5 of them on an island. Even on Azura Island, there were probably very few of them. Zhuan also realized that his question just now was indeed a bit idiotic. No wonder Shawshank had such a strange look in his eyes. As soon as Deba left, a figure immediately rushed onto the blood-colored platform. This person carried a large saber on his back. His upper body was bare, and his muscles were bulging. His bronze skin reflected a dazzling luster, and the aura on his body was also quite powerful. Who dares to come up and die? The man roared. With a pull of his right hand, the large saber was immediately pulled out and stopped in front of him. The terrifying force caused the entire blood-colored platform to tremble. A late-stage Empyrean martial artist. Sensing the aura of the burly man with the large saber, many people in the stands fell silent. For a moment, no one went up to fight. In the Azura blood field, the most battles should be at the Golden Sovereign realm. There were relatively few Empyrean realm cultivators, but that was only relative. However, even if they were at the Empyrean realm, they were basically at the early stage of the Empyrean realm. As for a peak Empyrean monster like Deba, it was likely that only the top geniuses of Azura City could compare to him. That was why Deba was able to obtain 3 consecutive victories so easily. No one dares to accept the challenge? The man crossed his arms over his chest, and the corner of his mouth revealed a mocking smile. He naturally noticed the slightly silent atmosphere around him. I'll go up and give it a try. Zhuan chuckled. With a stomp of his foot, he leaped up from his seat and flew towards the blood-colored platform like a roc spreading its wings. My lord! Shawshank was shocked. Just as he was about to stop him, Zhuan had already arrived above the blood-colored platform. Immediately after, he slammed into the center of the blood-colored platform with a heavy weight and stared indifferently at the man with the large saber in front of him. You plan to fight with me? The man raised his eyebrows, and a trace of surprise appeared in his eyes. This was because he realized that the young man in front of him was only at the early stage of the Empyrean realm. With such a cultivation, he actually dared to challenge him, a late-stage Empyrean realm cultivator. Wasn't this a little too arrogant? Everyone in the stands also noticed the aura on Zhuan's body, and a strange expression appeared on their faces. Many people didn't understand. The man with the large saber was clearly 2 small realms higher than the young man, but the young man still dared to challenge him. Was he planning to die? Yes. Can't I? Zhuan nodded slightly and said indifferently. The man with the large saber's face froze, and then he sneered, Of course you can. However, the saber has no eyes and accidentally kills you. Don't regret it. Isn't the battle in the Azura Blood Arena supposed to end only when one is dead? How can I win if I don't kill you? Zhuan said indifferently. Arrogant brat. The man with the large saber snorted coldly. He stomped his foot and pulled out the saber hilt in his right hand. His entire body turned into an afterimage and instantly swept toward Zhuan. The large saber in his hand emitted an extremely sharp cold light, as if it could destroy everything. The scarlet-robed man below the stage watched all this indifferently, but there was a trace of mockery in his eyes when he looked at Zhuan. In his opinion, Zhuan, who was only at the early stage of the Empyrean realm, was simply courting death by challenging the man with the large saber, who was at the late stage of the Empyrean realm. Tear him apart. Tear this arrogant brat to shreds in one fell swoop. Does this brat think he is the crown prince of hell? He wants to challenge someone at a higher realm than him. He is simply courting death. The moment the man with the large saber swept out, countless people in the stands booed. Of course, the target of the boos was naturally Zhuan. As for the man with the large saber, the audience cheered for him to tear apart Zhuan. My lord is too impulsive. Why did he challenge such a strong opponent right from the start? If my lord dies, how am I going to explain it to Lord Purple? Shawshank frowned and began to frown. He knew that Zhuan had an Emperor realm expert behind him. If Zhuan died here, He would not be able to escape responsibility. Thinking of his own possible fate, Shawshank's heart became extremely chaotic. At this moment, the man with the large saber on the blood-red stage arrived in front of Zhuan in an instant. He raised the large saber above his head and immediately brought it down, wanting to completely kill Zhuan. Zhuan calmly stood where he was, looking at the approaching saber. The Buddhist energy in his body began to spread, and the surface of his skin began to turn pale gold. Brat, are you regretting it now? But there is no use regretting it. You will die even if you regret it. Seeing that Zhuan was not moving at all, the man with the large saber's smile became more and more ferocious. The saber in his hand suddenly fell, aiming for Zhuowen's forehead. Boom! The moment the saber neared Zhuan, an extremely dazzling golden light erupted. At this moment, it was as if a small sun had risen from the blood-red stage. Then Zhuowen's body grew taller, transforming into 4 heads and 8 arms. 2 of his arms came together and caught the saber that was coming down at him. At the same time, the remaining 6 arms violently struck out. Boom! The man with the large blade did not expect such an unforeseen event. His chest and abdomen were full of openings. The 6 golden arms heavily struck the man's chest and abdomen. Immediately, an extremely ear-piercing muffled sound erupted. The man with the large saber's eyes bulged, and his waist bent like a cooked shrimp. Blood flowed from his mouth. Die! Zhuowen's indifferent voice rang out. Then, the golden light from the 6 arms reached its peak, and a tremendous force spread out. The man with the large saber only snorted softly before he was crushed into a mist of blood by this tremendous force. The moment the man with the large blade was directly crushed to death, the entire viewing gallery around the Azura blood arena descended into a short period of silence. Even the face of the blood-robed man below the stage stiffened slightly, revealing a dull expression. The man with the large saber, who was in the advanced Heavenly Master stage, was actually killed by an initial Heavenly Master in one move. Wasn't this too abnormal? Shawshank, who was still letting his imagination run wild, was also affected by the quiet atmosphere around him. He looked at the blood-colored platform and saw a scene that even he couldn't believe. Licking his slightly dry lips, Shawshank finally spat out these words, "This Lord's strength is so terrifying." Zhuan tilted his head slightly, looked at the still sluggish scarlet-robed man, and said with a shrug, "This round should be considered my win, right?" The scarlet-robed man came back to his senses and nodded subconsciously, "You've won this round. Do you still want to continue the challenge?" "Of course, I'll continue the challenge." Zhuan nodded and stood quietly in the middle of the blood-red stage, waiting for the others to come up to challenge him. However, due to Zhuowen's shocking move of killing a late-stage Heavenly Master in one move, Zhuowen's stage seemed quite deserted. After waiting for nearly half an incense stick's time, no one came up. Chapter 11:19. Auction House. The blood-robed man was startled. He shook his head and said, "I think you're here to obtain the Azura medal and participate in the island origin competition in 2 months, right?" Zhuan nodded. He didn't need to hide this matter, so he admitted it openly. "With your strength, you're qualified to obtain the Azura medal. You don't need to challenge on this stage anymore." Zhuowen waved his sleeve, and a wisp of blood shadow flew out. Zhuowen waved his right hand, and the blood shadow was sucked into his palm. When he turned his hand over, he saw that it was a triangular blood-red medal. "Many thanks." Zhuan cupped his hands and left the blood-colored stage. Under everyone's gaze, he returned to Shawshank's seat. "Lord, you've hidden your strength well." When Zhuan sat down, Shawshank gave him a thumbs up and praised him. Zhuowen waved his hand instead, and then he asked, "According to what you said last time, the Yama Crown Prince of the Azura Blood Manor is the son of Azura Li Di. Do you know the strength of the Yama Crown Prince?" Shawshank was startled. He looked around and said in a low voice, "Lord, this Yama Crown Prince is extraordinary. It is said that his cultivation has reached the peak of the Heavenly Venerable Realm, and he has the battle strength of a first-layer Great Emperor. Ordinary first-layer Great Emperors can't do anything to him." A peak Heavenly Venerable with the battle strength of a first-layer Great Emperor? Zhuan narrowed his eyes. It seemed that this Yama crown prince wasn't weak. Among all the geniuses Zhuowen had seen, he was second only to Evil Moon. Evil Moon could kill a first-layer great emperor. There was still a gap between him and the Yama crown prince. After the Yama crown prince obtained 10 consecutive victories in the Azura Blood Arena, he didn't come here anymore. In his opinion, the people in the Azura Blood Arena were too weak and couldn't enter his eyes, Shawshank continued. Besides the Yama crown prince, there should be other monstrous geniuses in Azura City, right? Zhuowen suddenly asked. Yes. Shui Luozi of the Blood-Splashing Gang and Lunjia of the Jianing Auction House are both at the peak of the Celestial Master Realm at such a young age. Although their battle prowess isn't as terrifying as the Yama Crown Princes, they are still far stronger than ordinary peak Celestial Masters, Shawshank said softly. Zhuowen nodded his head when he heard Azura's words. He secretly remembered these people in his heart. He knew that he would definitely meet them in 2 months' time. After all, he had to fight for the island's source and the thousand-fold fossil. These geniuses of Azura City would definitely become his opponents. Zhuowen observed the Azura Blood Arena for a while. When he found that there were no warriors worthy of his attention, he left with Shawshank. After sending Shawshank away, Zhuowen returned to the inn alone. He sat down cross-legged and silently waited for the auction to begin a month later. After a month had passed, Yun and Xiang walked out of the room at the same time. Zhuowen looked at Xiang and found that the latter's temperament had become much more free and easy. It was as if he was free and unfettered. He knew that it was probably because Xiang had successfully refined the carefree sword and was affected by its aura. Did you refine it successfully? Yun asked with a smile. I've succeeded. With the unfettered sword, I can feel that my strength has far surpassed that of an ordinary first-layer emperor. Thank you, Master, for bestowing this sword upon me. Ziyang clasped his hands and looked at Zhuowen gratefully. Zhuowen shook his head and said indifferently, You don't need to thank me. The stronger you are, the more useful you will be to me. The Jianing Auction House's auction should be starting soon. Let's go and take a look. After saying that, Yun and Xiang left the inn. Walking on the street, Zhuowen found that the flow of people in Azura City was much more lively than usual. The sea of people, as well as the noise and curses that soared into the sky, caused Zhuowen to be quite stunned. Moreover, he keenly discovered that the direction of the human flow was the Jianing Auction House. It seemed that the Jianing Auction House's auction was indeed a grand event in Azura City. It could actually attract such a terrifying number of people. When they arrived at the entrance of the Jianing Auction House, Zhuowen frowned and found that the flow of people here was even more terrifying than on the street. It was a terrifying scene of people squeezing together. From time to time, there would be bloodshed due to the crowding. Curses and noises echoed deafeningly throughout the entire space. There are so many people. Muttering in a low voice, Zhuowen did not randomly squeeze in like the other people. Instead, his gaze was fixed on a small passage to the side. In front of the passage, there was a rather neat red carpet. At the entrance of the passage, there were more than 10 black-clothed guards with weapons in their hands and cold gazes standing there. Although the entrance of the auction house was crowded to the point of bursting, no one dared to enter the passage. This was because everyone knew that this passage led to the VIP box in the auction house. Only the disciples of large powers or Emperor Realm experts were qualified to enter. As for those martial warriors who didn't have strength or background, they could only follow the crowd and squeeze through the entrance. As Zhuowen's gaze swept across the passageway, a group of people happened to walk along the red carpet and enter the passageway. The leader of this group of people was a young man of about 24 or 25 years of age. His face was excessively pale, but his face was well-defined and there were signs of him being handsome. Moreover, the aura of this young man could faintly make the air fluctuate slightly. His strength had probably reached the peak of the Celestial Master Realm. This person's cultivation should be at the peak of the Celestial Master Realm, and he's not very old. I'm afraid that in the entire Azura City, he can be considered a monstrous genius. Xiang's gaze also fell on the young man and he murmured in a low voice. Zhuowen nodded. According to Shawshank, there should only be 3 monstrous geniuses in Azura City. They were Yama Crown Prince, Shui Luozi, and Luanjia. Luanjia was a genius of the Jianing auction house, so she was definitely not this young man. In other words, this young man was either Shui Luozi or Yama Crown Prince. Seemingly sensing a somewhat different gaze, the pale-faced young man's footsteps paused slightly. Tilting his head slightly, his cold and indifferent gaze glanced at Zhuo Wen and Ziyang, who were quietly standing a short distance away. His eyebrows slightly knitted together. "Young master, I'm afraid those two aren't simple. If this old man's guess is correct, the young man in purple should be an Emperor Realm Master." Beside the young man stood an old man wrapped in a black robe. His turbid eyes followed the young man's line of sight and fell on Zhuan and Zing. His gaze lingered on Zhang for a long time, an extremely dignified look in his eyes. Emperor Realm Master? There are only a few Emperor Realm Masters in Azura City. I've never seen this purple-robed young man before. The pale-faced young man narrowed his eyes and said indifferently, "I'm afraid he's a genius sent by the forces of other islands. The Emperor Realm Master should be guarding the black-robed young man. His goal should be the island source of Azura Island in 2 months." The black-robed old man said in a deep voice. The pale-faced young man nodded and a cold smile appeared at the corners of his mouth. He said indifferently, "A mere early celestial master dares to try and snatch the source of Azura Island? In 2 months, I'll make sure this brat never returns." Yama Crown Prince, you're quite fast. There's still some time before the auction starts and you're already here. It seems like you're very interested in this auction. A slightly mocking voice sounded, causing the pale-faced young man to frown. He tilted his head and saw a group of people coming from behind the red carpet. The person in the lead was wearing a blood-red robe and had a blood-red vertical mark between his eyebrows. He looked quite strange. "Shui Luozi?" Yama Crown Prince narrowed his eyes and said indifferently, "Looking at your appearance, you're going to compete with me for that thing?" I say, Your Majesty, that thing should be an ownerless object, right? Whoever offers the highest price will get it." "Don't tell me you think that thing is already in your bag, Your Highness?" Shui Luozi sneered. Yama Crown Prince grinned and said, "I hope you can compete with me, but I don't think the possibility is high." After saying that, Yama Crown Prince lifted his foot and walked towards the passage, ignoring Shui Luozi's gloomy face. "Let's go too." Not long after Yama Crown Prince entered the passage, Shui Luozi snorted and followed him into the passage. More than a dozen black-clothed guards at the entrance of the passage lowered their heads, not daring to stop Yama Crown Prince and Shui Luozi. Yama Crown Prince and Shui Luozi? While the Yama Crown Prince and Shui Luozi were talking, Zhuo Wen also figured out their identities. However, he was even more puzzled. What was the thing they were talking about? It seems that there may be some good things in this auction. "Ziyang, let's go over there." As Zhuo Wen spoke, he led Ziyang and walked towards the passageway. Zhuo Wen's actions naturally attracted the attention of the extremely crowded crowd. Are these two people sick in the head? That's the passage to the VIP seats. Who do they think they are? How dare they enter this passage? Quite a few people revealed looks of disdain when they saw this scene. There were even quite a few people who laughed in schadenfreude. This is the passage to the VIP seats. You two are not qualified to enter. Sure enough, when Zhuowen and Ziyang arrived at the entrance of the passage, they were stopped by the black-clothed guards. Even Emperor Realm experts are not qualified to enter? Ziyang took a step forward as a terrifying emperor pressure descended. Immediately, the dozen or so black-clothed guards standing at the entrance of the passage all fell to their knees with a plop. Their eyes were filled with fear. "So it's Lord D. Realm. We have eyes but failed to recognize Mount Tai. We hope Lord D. Realm will be magnanimous and spare us this time." The moment Ziyang released his emperor's might, the black-clothed guards trembled and hurriedly begged for mercy. Ziyang flicked his sleeve and withdrew his Emperor Realm aura. Immediately after, he said coldly, "Are we qualified to enter now?" Yes. Sirs, please come in." Chapter 1120. The heart of the ice on the passage led to a dimly lit corridor. Zhuan walked to the end of the corridor and turned a corner. What appeared in front of him was the magnificent auction venue. The seats were so densely packed that they dazzled the eyes. The auction platform was built with sparkling crystals and gems. All of this was a spectacular sight in Zhuowen's eyes. Esteemed guests, I'm here to bring you to the vacant VIP seats. At the end of the corridor, a charming maid with a voluptuous figure walked over with a smile. However, her gaze was fixed on Xiang. Anyone with a discerning eye could see that Xiang's aura was far more terrifying than Zhuowen's. Clearly, Xiang's identity as an emperor was self-evident. In the maid's view, Xiang should be the master, and the black-robed youth should be the servant. Therefore, her gaze was fixed on Xiang. However, Xiang's next reaction caused the maid's expression to stiffen. Xiang lowered his head and asked Jin, "Master, what do you mean?" "Master?" The servant's body stiffened. It was only then that her beautiful eyes landed on Zhuowen. She hadn't expected that the young man in black, who was only an early-stage heavenly venerate, would be the master of this emperor realm expert. "Lead the way." Zhuowen nonchalantly said these words. She did not feel any dissatisfaction because of the maid's attitude just now. "All right. Esteemed guests, please follow me." After realizing that she had made a mistake, the maid's face turned red. She hurriedly led the two of them into the inner room. After choosing an empty seat, the maid hurriedly left. The area of the seat was not large. It was only about 10 square meters. In the middle of the seat was a seat covered with fluff. In front of the seat was a rather large window. Through the window, Yuan could see a terrifying tide of people gathering in the open space below the crystal platform. The VIP seats were basically located on the second floor. Those who sat in the VIP seats could overlook the ordinary warriors who had gathered below. There were more than a dozen such VIP seats on the second floor, surrounding the entire auction house in a ring shape. On the VIP seat opposite Zhuowen was Shui Luozi, who had a red vertical stripe between his eyebrows, who was at the entrance of the passage just now, was sitting there. Shui Luozi merely glanced indifferently at Zhuowen before returning his gaze to the auction stage below. In the room next to Shui Luozi's was Yama Crown Prince and his entourage. Yama Crown Prince also noticed Zhuowen because he knew that Xiang was an Emperor Realm expert. Therefore, he showed a hint of interest in Zhuowen. The other VIP seats were more or less occupied by other people. Obviously, they were people from other major forces in Azura City. Otherwise, they wouldn't be qualified to sit in the VIP seats. The wait did not continue for long. A loud and clear bell sound resounded over the empty auction ground. A handsome young man with a smile on his face slowly walked out from the red curtain behind the crystal tall platform. "It's Lun Jia. Is this guy going to host the auction?" The Yama Crown Prince and Shui Luozi's gazes converged on the young man on the high platform. They couldn't help but reveal a hint of surprise as they muttered in a low voice. Yama Crown Prince and Shui Luozi didn't deliberately lower their voices, so Zhuowen naturally heard them clearly. He couldn't help but take another look at the smiling young man on the crystal platform. This person was the genius of Jianing Auction House, Lun Jia. She was also a monstrous talent on par with Shui Luozi and Yama Crown Prince. She was also a peak heavenly master with terrifying battle strength. Of course, although Lun Jia acting as the auctioneer for this auction surprised many people, everyone's attention was more focused on the auction that was about to begin. After all, in every auction, there would be a rare treasure that would make people covet it, and this time should be no exception. Hello everyone. Many of you should have recognized my identity, so I don't intend to introduce myself too much. Everyone is here for the auction, so I don't intend to beat around the bush. Now, let's get to the main topic. The auction begins. What caused everyone to be slightly surprised was that Lun Jia's words and actions were not the slightest bit sloppy. This caused a trace of satisfaction to rise in the hearts of those martial artists who were looking forward to the auction. Lun Jia's words had just sounded when the red curtain behind her was slowly pulled open. Soon after, a powerful light shone over. Two men dressed like guards walked out from behind the curtain. Both of them were holding a faint blue longsword with both of their hands. There was a trace of aqua blue light continuously flowing over the body of the sword. The aura that unintentionally surged was extremely surging. This sword is called Cold Light. It's a low-grade royal-level spirit treasure. It can cut through iron as if it were mud. It's extremely sharp. It contains an extremely rich ice attribute. If a warrior who cultivates an ice attribute cultivation technique possesses this cold light, he will certainly be able to enhance his strength to a whole new level. The starting price is 100,000 medium-grade spirit stones. Luanjia slowly took cold light and gently waved the sword in her right hand. Suddenly, a burst of cold air gushed out, causing the surrounding temperature to drop sharply. When Zhuowen saw the cold light in Luanjia's hand, he leisurely sat down on his chair. His hand stroked the armrest, but there was not the slightest bit of interest in his eyes. Given Zhuowen's current wealth, a mere low-grade Emperor Soul treasure was not enough to tempt him. The people in the other VIP seats did not make a sound. Obviously, they had the same thoughts as Zhuan. A spiritual treasure like cold light was not attractive to them. Although the people in the VIP seats were not interested in it, the ordinary cultivators below were scrambling for it. A monarch-rank spirit treasure could be considered as an extremely rare spirit treasure to ordinary cultivators like them. For a time, the sound of endless bidding resounded. This time, the bidding did not last for long. It was won by a rather unremarkable skinny man below with a price of 180,000 middle-grade spirit stones. After this man won the bid, he cleverly left the auction house quietly. This was a Jura city, where the law of the jungle had evolved to the extreme. If this person did not stop in time, he would become a snipe in the eyes of others. After the cold light was auctioned off, under Luanjia's hosting, a dazzling variety of treasures appeared. There were armors, cultivation methods, spiritual medicines, and so on. It could be said that there was a rich variety of treasures. However, most of them could not catch the eyes of the people in the VIP seats. Therefore, after the auction had been going on for about an hour, there was no one bidding on the VIP seats on the second floor. It was a somewhat strange silence. The somewhat muffled sound of the bell once again sounded. The curtain behind Luanjia was once again pulled open. Immediately, a female servant with a graceful figure slowly walked over while holding a silver plate in her hand. There was even a silver cover on the silver plate. Luanjia received the silver plate and slowly opened it. Immediately, a frightening cold aura spread throughout the empty surroundings of the auction house. In fact, it even formed an icy blue illusory storm in the sky above. Many of the people present were caught off guard and were infected by this cold air, shivering all over. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Everyone's gazes converged on the silver plate. Soon after, everyone was stunned to find that the silver plate was holding an icy blue heart that was constantly beating. While the heart was beating, an extremely terrifying cold whirlwind gushed out. The bone-chilling cold air made some cultivators who were not very strong feel quite fearful. In the VIP seats, Zhuowen's gaze suddenly narrowed. At this moment, the ice Saint rune in his left hand was stirring. He keenly felt that when the icy blue heart appeared, the profound soul ice butterfly hidden in the Saint rune began to move. He could clearly feel the profound soul ice butterfly's desire. It was very obvious that the profound soul ice butterfly greatly desired this icy blue heart. This thing is probably very beneficial to the profound soul ice butterfly. Kid bid for it. Xiao Hei's voice suddenly rang out, causing Zhuon to nod his head. As for the other people in the VIP seats, they started to become restless. Their gazes were focused on the ice blue heart on the silver plate. Their eyes were filled with passion. With a single glance, they could tell that this heart was an extraordinary item. Naturally, their interest was piqued. This is the heart of the ice luan bird. As for the ice luan bird, I don't need to introduce it. This bird is a soul beast that lives in the extreme north of Azura Island, above the Bitter Sea. An adult ice luan bird basically has the cultivation of an Empyrean, and the heart in my hand is obtained from an adult ice luan bird. This ice luan bird's heart is very beneficial to cultivators who cultivate cold attribute cultivation methods. It can even speed up their cultivation. Its value is self-evident. The starting price is 300,000 mid-grade spirit stones. Luanjia's clear voice rang out. However, the starting price of 300,000 mid-grade spirit stones caused the entire place to fall silent. For ordinary cultivators, 300,000 was already a large sum. 320,000. 350,000. However, the silence only appeared for a few minutes, and the cultivators in the open space began to bid. Although the starting price of the ice luan bird's heart was indeed terrifying, for cultivators who cultivated cold attribute cultivation methods, this was simply a priceless treasure. When the price soared to 500,000, the bidding voices became very few, or even none. "Is there anyone else bidding?" said Luanjia. Her gaze landed on the VIP seats. She knew that the heart of the ice luan should be enough to move these fellows. If these fellows were to bid, the final price would often exceed one's expectations. 550,000. I think with the face of Shui Luozi, you should give me one, right? Shui Luozi chuckled and a slightly feminine voice rang out. On his handsome face, there was a trace of an evil smile. "Ha! This thing is useless to me, so what's the harm in giving it to you?" The Yama Crown Prince in the next room said lightly, obviously not intending to compete. The other VIP seats also fell into silence. Obviously, Shui Luozi's face was still very big, and they did not want to offend such a character. Luanjia's eyes flickered, and she chuckled, "Is there anyone else bidding? If not, this ice luan bird's heart will belong to Shui Luozi." "Ha! Luanjia, with the face of Shui Luozi, no one will bid. Just hit the hammer." Shui Luozi's eyes were full of pride. Even the Yama Crown Prince did not compete with him. Who would dare to offend the blood-splashing gang and bid with him? 560,000. Chapter 11:21. Immortal Stone. The moment this clear voice rang out, the atmosphere in the auction house became slightly gloomy. Immediately after, everyone's gazes converged on the source of the voice. On the VIP seat opposite Shui Luozi, a black-robed young man was lazily sitting on a chair, while a purple-robed young man stood silently behind him. Who is this person? He actually dares to bid against Shui Luozi. Doesn't he know about the influence of the Splashing Blood Gang in Azura City? Private conversations sounded from the empty ground below. Everyone's gazes were strange as they looked at Zhuowen in the VIP seats. Even Luanjia couldn't help but raise her head and look at Xun. In fact, after Shui Luozi made his bid, he didn't have much hope for others to bid against him. The Splashing Blood Gang wasn't an ordinary faction, and the heart of the ice luan wasn't a must-have item. Therefore, even the Yama Crown Prince didn't plan to compete with Shui Luozi. However, the strange young man in the VIP seat didn't hesitate to bid, which was somewhat beyond his expectations. "This guy is somewhat interesting." Luanjia chuckled and muttered in a low voice. Shui Luozi's eyes became extremely gloomy. He coldly looked at Zhuan and said, "You want to bid against me for the heart of the ice luan? Do you know who I am?" Zhuan indifferently glanced at Shui Luozi and grinned. "What does my bid have to do with who you are?" Shui Luozi's face froze slightly. He took a deep breath and coldly said, "Good. Very good. 600,000 middle-grade spirit stones." Seeing Shui Luozi bid again, Luanjia's smile became even more brilliant. As an auctioneer of an auction house, the higher the price of the item, the better. 610,000. Zhuowen unhurriedly raised the price. 700,000. Shui Luozi's face became slightly unsightly. 710,000. Zhuowen continued. "Gotcha." Shui Luozi suddenly crushed the armrest on his right hand. His eyes turned slightly red as he stared at Zhuowen and shouted, 800,000. "If you can increase the price, I'll give it to you." The value of the ice luan bird's heart was at most 500,000 mid-grade spirit stones. Buying it for 800,000 mid-grade spirit stones was already a big loss. Therefore, if Zhuowen increased the price, Master Shui Luozi didn't want to be a fool. 810,000. Zhuowen gently rubbed his right hand as he spoke. Shui Luozi snorted and said, "I'll remember you." "Good. This esteemed guest has bid 810,000. I wonder if anyone else is willing to bid?" Luanjia's slightly high-pitched voice sounded again, reverberating throughout the auction hall. Of course, the only reply he received was numerous gazes that seemed as if they were looking at an idiot. 800,000 had already far exceeded the value of this ice luan's heart, so how could there possibly be anyone bidding for it? Dong. Seeing that no one was bidding, Luanjia finalized the deal, and she revealed a trace of a brilliant smile to Zhuo as she said, "Esteemed guest, the cold Luan's heart belongs to you. In a moment, we'll send someone to deliver the item to your VIP area." In his seat, Yuan let out a sigh of relief. In fact, he didn't care much about spirit stones. After all, he had obtained a huge amount of spirit stones in the True Vein Forest, so Yuan was still somewhat wealthy. However, the heart of the ice Luan was something that could only be found by chance. Even if he had to spend a lot of spirit stones, Zhuo did not mind obtaining it completely. This was because this item was quite beneficial to the profound soul ice butterfly's growth. After the result of the ice Luan's heart was finalized, Luanjia continued to act as a qualified auctioneer and continued the auction. Of course, during this period, there was no lack of introductions, which aroused the desire of many people below to bid for it. It had to be said that Luanjia was indeed a very qualified auctioneer. It was worth noting that since Yuan had won the ice Luan's heart from Shueluazi had been casting gloomy glances at him from time to time, causing Zhuo to frown slightly. "Young master, this guy dares to bid against you. He is simply courting death. After the auction is over, should we—" A subordinate next to Shueluazi said with a vicious look in his eyes. "Of course, it's not that easy to take my things, but this matter can wait until the auction is over. This time, our goal is to get the lowest price of the auction," Shueluazi said lightly. In the box next to Shueluazi, Yama Crown Prince looked at Zhuan with great interest and said, "He dares to bid against Shueluazi. This guy has some guts, but Shueluazi must be flustered and exasperated now. To be able to have an Emperor Realm expert as a guard, this guy's background is not weak. Generally, the disciples of such a big force are not afraid of anything, so it's not strange for him to bid against Shueluazi," the black-robed elder next to Yama Crown Prince whispered. The door to the VIP area was opened, and a female attendant with a hot figure in revealing clothes walked over slowly while holding a silver tray that contained the heart of the cold Luan. She squatted down and revealed the snow-white skin before her chest as she said in a gentle voice, "Respected guest, this is your heart of the cold Luan. Please pay the price first." Zhuo nodded. He took out 810,000 middle-tier spirit stones from his spirit ring and handed them to the female servant. The latter bowed and slowly withdrew from the private room. Holding the heart of the frost Luan in his hand, Zhuo felt a chilly sensation. The icy blue cold air silently spread to his right hand, but when Zhuo activated his essence force, this cold air was instantly dispersed by him. Woo woo woo. A soft whimpering sound came from the ice Saint rune, causing Zhuo to smile. He whispered, "Looks like the little guy can't wait." As he spoke, Yuan kept the ice Luan's heart in the ice Saint rune's space, and the whimpering sound gradually disappeared. Apparently, the mythical soul ice butterfly had begun to refine the chill on the ice Luan's heart. This ice Luan's heart is extremely suitable for the mythical soul ice butterfly. I'm afraid that after refining it, there will be a big improvement, Xiao Hei's voice sounded. Zhuo nodded and turned his attention back to the auction. At this moment, Luanjia had auctioned off 3 more treasures, and the treasures behind the ice Luan's heart were all good, so many people in the VIP box bid for them. One was won by Yama Crown Prince, another was won by Shueluazi, and the third was won by someone in another box. The next item is amazing. The curtain was pulled open again, and Luanjia's calm laughter slowly rang out, immediately attracting everyone's attention. What appeared in Luanjia's palm was a palm-sized black stone. The black stone looked ordinary, and it didn't even have the slightest luster. If it weren't for Luanjia's reminder, everyone would have thought that it was just an ordinary stone by the roadside. Do you know that mental energy and yuan power are different paths that lead to the same destination? It is said that when mental energy and yuan power combine, it will produce a higher level of energy called immortal energy. This energy is called immortal energy, and it is of a higher level than mental energy and yuan power. At the same time, it is also more powerful. Luanjia's voice slowly rang out, and Zhuo, who was originally sitting lazily on the chair, suddenly sat up, staring at the ordinary black stone in Luanjia's palm. Luanjia's words had completely aroused everyone's interest. Shueluazi and Yama Crown Prince also stared at Luanjia. They knew that Luanjia had said so much because the so-called immortal energy had nothing to do with the black stone in her hand. Ha! I have said so much, and everyone should have guessed that the so-called immortal energy has something to do with the black stone in my hand. This stone is called the immortal stone. The reason why it's called this is naturally because this stone contains a strange formation. This formation can perfectly combine mental energy and origin energy to produce extremely powerful immortal energy. As soon as Luanjia's words came out, there was an uproar. Naturally, everyone knew very little about the immortal energy. However, since this energy was of a higher level than Yuan power and mental energy, it was obvious that the so-called immortal energy was extremely terrifying. How could they not be excited? Sensing the restlessness of the crowd, Luanjia smiled and continued, "However, I want to remind everyone that the array in the immortal stone is incomplete, so the immortal energy produced is limited. Also, this immortal stone can only be used once a day. After it is used up, it will be as useless as an ordinary stone. If you want to use it again, you will have to wait until the next day." When these words were spoken, the originally excited crowd quietened down. They did not expect that the formation within the celestial stone was actually incomplete and had so many restrictions when using it. It can only be used once a day? The array in the immortal stone is incomplete? Yen Luo Crown Prince and Shui Luo Zi, who were originally interested, frowned. In fact, they were interested because of the so-called uniqueness of the immortal energy. However, the two of them were only martial artists and did not have any talent in mental strength. Therefore, the immortal stone was not very useful to them. In addition, the immortal stone was not complete. The two of them immediately lost a lot of their interest. If they were warriors who cultivated mental energy and Yuan power, they might have bid, but they weren't particularly interested. In addition, the immortal stone was incomplete, so they were even less interested. The crowd in the open space also shook their heads. Obviously, they weren't very interested in the immortal stone. Did they have to spend a lot of time cultivating mental energy for this immortal stone? This was obviously not possible. Luanjia was a little embarrassed. Although she was mentally prepared when she announced the flaws of the immortal stone, she didn't expect that everyone would lose interest in it. Luanjia coughed dryly and said loudly, "Let's start the bidding. The starting price of this immortal stone is 500,000 medium spirit stones." 500,000? Isn't that too expensive? Chapter 11:22. 7 Orifices Exquisite Pilshue Luazi and Yama Crown Prince shook their heads and completely lost interest in the immortal stones. If the starting price of the immortal stones was lower, and if Shang Luanjia wasn't as certain as she had said, then the two of them would be willing to auction it. But now, they didn't want to be suckers. The entire auction house was silent for about 15 minutes. The smile on Luanjia's face was a little stiff. Just as Luanjia was about to embarrassingly put away the celestial stone, a voice that was neither fast nor slow resounded. 510,000. The moment this voice rang out, it completely attracted the attention of many people. Even Yama Crown Prince and Shui Luozi frowned and looked over. When they saw that the bidder was the young man who had just bid against Shui Luozi, many people in the auction house revealed strange expressions. This guy was really a maverick. Not only did he compete for the Ice Luan heart from Shui Luozi, but he also bid for the immortal stone that no one was interested in. What an interesting guy! Yama Crown Prince whispered with a smile. Shui Luozi's eyes flickered with a deep chill, but he didn't say anything. The corners of Luanjia's mouth curved into a smile. She glanced at him and continued to shout, "Is there anyone else who wants to bid? Although this immortal stone has some shortcomings, it also has many advantages. I don't think anyone should miss out on it." As soon as these words came out, there was still no sound from the crowd. Obviously, they were unmoved by Luanjia's words. In the VIP seats, Yun looked calm on the surface, but he was quite nervous on the inside. Although the array formation within the immortal stone was incomplete, it was undoubtedly extremely useful to Zhuowen since it was able to fuse mental energy and Yuanli together. 550,000. As soon as Luanjia's voice faded, a voice rang out from a rather remote box in the VIP seats. Zhuowen frowned slightly. He tilted his head slightly and saw a middle-aged man wearing a long black robe sitting in a seat in a remote private room. Zhuowen's sharp senses discovered that there was a badge with 4 vertical stripes carved on the middle-aged man's chest. A Grade 4 Arcana Master? Zhuowen's eyes narrowed as he muttered to himself. It's Master Wu Yen of Azura City. It said that not only is he a 4th-rank arcanist, his cultivation isn't weak either. He's reached the peak of the ultimate Emperor realm. These immortal stones are quite useful to him. When everyone saw the black-robed man in the remote private room, their eyes all revealed a look of understanding. Immortal stones were useless to martial artists, but for people who cultivated both yuan power and mental energy, they were extremely suitable treasures. Even if this immortal stone has all sorts of flaws, it is still of great help to martial artists who are in dual cultivation. This is why Grandmaster Wu Yen was so decisive in bidding for it. 600,000. Zhuowen continued to follow. Grandmaster Wu Yen frowned and hesitated for a bit, but he still clenched his teeth and said, 700,000, 800,000. As soon as Grandmaster Wu Yen finished speaking, Zhuowen followed him without the slightest hesitation, causing many people to be rather surprised. This young man seems to be determined to obtain this immortal stone. Finally, Grandmaster Wu Yen fell silent. The price of 800,000 had already exceeded his bottom line, so he didn't plan to continue. Is there anyone else who wants to bid? Luan Jia, on the other hand, was overjoyed. He could be considered to be extremely satisfied that the immortal stones that no one cared about could be sold at such a high price. These words were merely spoken casually. 900,000. As soon as Luan Jia's voice fell, a rather mocking voice rang out, causing Zhuowen's pupils to shrink. He tilted his head and coldly stared at Xue Luozi, who had a mocking expression on his face. As soon as Xue Luozi's voice rang out, many people shook their heads. They knew that Xue Luozi was taking revenge on this young man. 1 million. Zhuowen's eyes turned cold. 1,100,000. The price continued to rise. Xue Luozi was obviously going against Zhuowen. He actually continued to bicker with Zhuowen and raised the price to 1,500,000. 1,555,000. If you can increase the price, you can have the immortal stone. Zhuowen's voice turned even colder. Xue Luozi's expression froze. He was just about to blurt out a price when he abruptly stopped. This immortal stone might be special, but it was of no use to him. He was just trying to trick Zhuowen. Since Yuan had already spoken, Xue Luozi naturally knew when to stop. He wasn't going to spend 1,555,000 mid-grade spirit stones on a useless immortal stone. Luan Jia's heart was pounding with excitement. Even she didn't expect the immortal stone to be sold at such a high price. It seemed like she really had to thank Xue Luozi for deliberately raising the price. 1,555,000. I don't think anyone else wants to increase the price, right? If no one else wants to increase the price, then this immortal stone belongs to this VIP. Luan Jia smiled as she finalized the price. After finalizing the price, Luan Jia handed the immortal stone to the maid behind the curtain and asked her to bring it to Zhuowen. She then continued to preside over the auction. In the box, after paying 1,555,000 mid-grade spirit stones and receiving the immortal stone, Zhuowen's face turned slightly gloomy. Originally, he could have gotten the immortal stone with 800,000 mid-grade spirit stones, but because of Xue Luozi, the price had been raised by 2 times. However, after receiving the immortal stone, Zhuowen's extremely bad mood eased a little. He stared at the immortal stone, and at the same time, poured his mental strength into the immortal stone. After a long while, Zhuowen once again opened his eyes, but his brows were tightly knit together. It was just as Luan Jia had said, there was indeed a formation within the celestial stone. Moreover, this formation was extremely complicated and detailed. Zhuowen had looked at it for a long time just now, but he was actually unable to see through it. He only knew that this formation should be incomplete. Xiaohei, can you take a look at the formation inside the immortal stone and see if it can be repaired? Zhuowen knew that Xiaohei was very knowledgeable, so he could only ask it for help when he couldn't understand the formation. This Dragon Lord has also checked it out. However, I don't really understand it. The array formation inside is too complicated. It's not something that ordinary arcanists can design. I'm afraid that the arcanist who designed this immortal stone is even stronger than Mu Feng. Furthermore, he should also be a powerful martial Dao master. Blackie replied in a somewhat awkward manner. Hearing those words, Zhuowen was a bit speechless. However, even Xiao He was unable to understand it. It was clear that the formation within the immortal stone was very mysterious. Likely, it had a great origin. Unfortunately, it was incomplete right now. This caused Zhuowen to feel a bit depressed. I can only use it once a day. Aren't there too many restrictions? Zhuowen muttered with a little complaint. It's already not bad. The might of immortal energy is extremely powerful. When the time comes and you can fuse immortal energy, you will know how powerful this thing is. Xiao He said in an indifferent tone. The auction continued in an orderly manner. The following items basically didn't attract the slightest bit of Zhuowen's interest. Therefore, Nguyen didn't open his mouth to bid. Instead, he quietly paid attention to the other people who were shouting at the top of their lungs. As time passed, the auction was finally coming to an end. Luan Jia's voice also became louder and louder. The next item will be the second last item of this auction. As soon as Luan Jia said this, everyone in the auction house quieted down. Everyone knew that the last two items of an auction were usually the best items of the auction. Therefore, everyone gathered their attention to see what the second last item was. An intense light shone. Then, a circular hole appeared under the crystal platform. A small frame slowly rose up. At the top of the frame was a square glass counter. Through the counter, a pill the size of a longan could be seen lying inside. This pill was blood red in color, and its surface was engraved with rather complex and mysterious pill patterns. If one were to look closely, they would discover that there were 7 groove-like small holes on the surface of the pill. Wisps of blood-red gas were inhaling and exhaling from the 7 small holes, forming a circular airflow. This is the 7 orifices exquisite pill. It has 7 orifices just like the human body. Furthermore, it is born with an exquisite heart. It is said that after consuming this 7 orifices exquisite pill, all 7 orifices will become exquisite and clear. What's even rarer is that cultivators who consume this 7 orifices exquisite pill can instantly advance by 2 small realms. Furthermore, it can increase the success rate of advancing to the Emperor realm by 50%. Luan Jia unhurriedly introduced the 7 orifice blood-colored pill on the counter. As she continued to introduce it, the entire auction house fell into silence. However, in this silence, there were continuous bursts of heavy breathing. The effects of the 7 orifices exquisite pill were too heaven-defying. Not only could it instantly raise a cultivator's cultivation by 2 small realms, but it could also increase the success rate of breaking through to the Emperor realm by 50%. This effect was absolutely unexpected. This 7 orifices exquisite pill is heaven-defying? Zhuowen's eyes were filled with shock. After the shock, they were filled with passion. If he could obtain this 7 orifices exquisite pill, he could advance to the advanced heavenly venerate realm. Furthermore, his success rate of advancing to the Emperor realm would increase by 50%. However, Dun, Yama Crown Prince, Shui Luozi, and the other VIPs in the VIP seats were breathing heavily. They stared at the 7 orifices exquisite pill on the counter with bloodshot eyes. They couldn't wait to grab it in their hands. However, reason gradually calmed them down. The Jianing auction house's influence was not to be underestimated. If anyone dared to snatch the pill from them, they would have to pay a heavy price. Lun Jia also sensed the excitement of the people around her. The corner of her mouth curled up as she said, "I won't waste any more time." The starting price of this 7 orifices exquisite pill is 1 million mid-grade spiritual stones. Each increment must be no less than 100,000. Let's begin. 1,100,000. 1,200,000. Chapter 1123. Blood Butcher. The price of the 7 orifices exquisite elixir rose rapidly. In just 15 minutes, the price had reached a whopping 3 million middle-rank spirit stones. To an ordinary warrior, this was a huge sum of money. They might not be able to earn so many middle-rank spirit stones in their lifetime. In fact, the ordinary warriors had already stopped bidding when the starting price of the 7 Orifices exquisite elixir was 1 million medium spirit stones. Now, the bidders were basically those from the major forces in the VIP seats on the second floor. Zhuan sat quietly in his private room and did not participate in the bidding. He knew that the price of the 7 Orifices exquisite elixir would definitely be raised to an extremely high level. Moreover, Yama Crown Prince and Shueluazi had not made a move yet. Therefore, he was not in a hurry. 5 million. Shueluazi gently rubbed his fingertips and calmly announced his price. As soon as his words came out, the surrounding area fell into a strange silence. Many people were amazed by Shueluazi's wealth. He had directly raised the price from 3 million to 5 million. He had directly raised the price by 2 million. Due to Shueluazi's sudden increase in price, the bidding voices from the other VIP seats became slightly quieter. Apparently, they were also shocked by Shueluazi's move. 5,500,000. The owner of the other private room was a little hesitant. He shouted out such a price with a pained expression. This could be considered the limit of what he could afford. He couldn't afford any more. What's the point of adding so little? 7 million. Shueluazi laughed and raised the price by 2 million. This time, the owner of the private room was completely defeated. The audience below the stage was also stunned. Shueluazi was indeed the son of the blood-splashing gang's leader. He was really rich and overbearing. Shueluazi's lips curled into a proud smile when he felt the astonished gazes from around him. He enjoyed the feeling of being the center of attention. Shueluazi, it seems like you brought a lot of private goods this time. The Yama Crown Prince chuckled. Soon after, he indifferently opened his mouth and said, 10 million mid-tier spirit stones. Shueluazi's face stiffened. He coldly stared at Yama Crown Prince and said, 20 million. Many people gasped when they saw Shueluazi doubling the price. 50 million. Yama Crown Prince was not to be trifled with and continued to raise the price. Shueluazi's face darkened as he coldly said, Yama Crown Prince, I know that you brought more spirit stones than me. Yama Crown Prince, Yama Crown Prince, I know that you brought more spirit stones than me, but I think you are here for the treasure. Yama Crown Prince, Yama Crown Prince. Yama Crown Prince. I know, Yama Crown Prince. Yama Crown Prince. Yama Crown Prince. Yama Crown Prince. Yama was Crown Prince to Yama Crown Prince. Dragon Yama. Yama Prince. Prince was Yama of Yama Crown. Yama was Crown Prince. Yama Prince. Prince Yama. Yama his Yama Prince to Yama. Yama to Yama was Yama. Yama Yama Prince to Yama. Yama Yama to Yama. Yama to Yama Ito. Yama Y King Crown Prince. Yama had brought nearly 1/10 of Shura Blood Hall's assets for the last treasure. This was a terrifying amount of wealth. Therefore, he was determined to get the treasure at the bottom of the box, and he did not want to let go of the 7 Orifices exquisite pill. Shueluazi narrowed his eyes. He knew that if he did not raise the price, Yama Crown Prince would compete with him to the end. Shueluazi raised his eyes slightly and looked at the window of the box on the left. The window of the box was covered with gauze, and only a vague figure could be seen. The figure nodded slightly. Shueluazi understood and said loudly, Yama Crown Prince, the total value of the spirit stones I brought this time is only 1 million upper spirit stones. I will bid 1 million upper spirit stones now. If you want it, you can call a higher price. I don't want the 7 Orifices exquisite pill. Yama Crown Prince frowned slightly. He also noticed Shueluazi's small movement just now. He also looked at the inconspicuous box on the side. Could it be that the leader of the blood-splashing gang is also here? Yama Crown Prince looked at the gauze box with great fear and murmured in a low voice. It should be. Even the Island Lord is interested in the treasure at the bottom of the box. If the Island Lord is not in a critical period of seclusion, I'm afraid that he will personally come here. Moreover, the other old men of Azura City should also be here. It's just that their goal is the treasure, so they didn't bid before. The black-robed old man beside Yama Crown Prince said with a dignified expression. Crown Prince, our main goal this time is to lower the price of the treasure. If we waste 1,000,000 upper-grade spiritual stones on this 7 orifices exquisite pill, I'm afraid it won't be so easy for us to compete with those old fellows. Furthermore, if we mess up this matter, the island master will blame us and that will be bad. Hearing the black-robed old man's anxious words, Yama Crown Prince's eyes revealed a trace of hesitation. He then nodded and said, "You are right. Our goal is the treasure at the bottom of the box. There is no need to waste spirit stones on the 7 orifices exquisite pill." Hearing this, the black-robed old man was relieved. Shweluazi also noticed that Yama Crown Prince had suddenly become silent. He couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. In fact, he was also very nervous that Yama Crown Prince would fight to the death with him. After all, the importance of the 7 orifices exquisite pill to a peak celestial master warrior like him was self-evident. It could increase his chances of becoming an emperor. Although Yama Crown Prince's cultivation was similar to his, Azura Blood Mansion had an extremely famous secret technique that could increase his chances of becoming an emperor. Therefore, the 7 orifices exquisite pill was not a must-have item for Yama Crown Prince. Luanjia, I don't think anyone here can afford 1,000,000 upper spirit stones, so you can announce the result. Shweluazi looked at Luanjia below and said proudly. Luanjia nodded. It was indeed a huge sum of money, far exceeding the value of the 7 orifices exquisite pill. However, she also knew that this item was absolutely priceless in the hands of a peak celestial master warrior like Shweluazi. Any price was worth it. Although Luanjia was envious, she didn't feel too much. Their Jianing auction house dealt with treasures all day long. Naturally, they also had treasures similar to the 7 orifices exquisite pill. Once Luanjia advanced to the Emperor realm, she would be able to obtain a similar pill. 1,000,000 upper spirit stones. Just as Luanjia was about to finalize the bid, a faint voice rang out. Immediately, the entire auction house fell into silence. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Everyone's eyes gathered on Zhuan. Soon, they were filled with astonishment. This time, the bidder was the young man who had bid for the cold Luanbird's heart with Shweluazi. The Yama Crown Prince also looked at Zhuan. The interest in his eyes grew even more intense. Shweluazi's face suddenly froze. He turned his head and stared at the young man opposite him. He said in a low voice, "You again? Do you have so many upper spirit stones on you?" "If I didn't have so many, how would I dare to bid?" Zhuan said indifferently. Then he looked at Luanjia and continued, "Shweluazi said that he only has 1,000,000 upper spirit stones. I don't think we need to wait any longer. Let's announce the result." "You're courting death," Shweluazi roared. He stomped his foot and was about to rush toward Zhuan. No one expected Shweluazi to lose his mind in rage. Bang! However, when Shweluazi was about to reach Shuowen's box, an invisible barrier appeared and blocked him. Shweluazi was forced to take a few steps back as he looked at Luanjia below. There were many barriers in the auction house. Luanjia was the one who had activated the defensive barrier in front of Zhuowen's box. "Shweluazi, I'm sure you know the rules of the Jianing auction house. You're not allowed to cause trouble or fight here. All your grievances can wait until you're out of the auction house. Now, this man is an honored guest of our auction house," Luanjia said coldly. Shweluazi's eyes were cold, but he did not dare to cause trouble in the Jianing auction house. He could only return to his seat and stare at Zhuan with murderous intent. "I hope you can keep the 7 orifices exquisite pill. You don't have to worry about that," Zhuan replied indifferently. Swoosh! Suddenly, the gauze in front of the box on the side was lifted, revealing the figure behind it. At the same time, an extremely terrifying emperor pressure spread out, causing the entire auction house to fall into a terrifying pressure. It was a middle-aged man with gloomy eyes. He was wearing a blood-red robe similar to Shweluazi's. His aura was as vast as the sea, and the pressure that surged out of his body could only be released by an Emperor Realm expert. At this moment, the middle-aged man stared indifferently at Zhuowen's box and said indifferently, "Young friend, can you give the 7 orifices exquisite pill to our splattering blood gang? The splattering blood gang will definitely remember your kindness." It's the leader of the splattering blood gang, Shui Tufu. I didn't expect him to come in person. Is he here for the auction house's treasures? The expressions of quite a number of people below the stage changed slightly when they saw the middle-aged man wearing a blood-colored long robe. The surprised whispers revealed the identity of this middle-aged man. Yun narrowed his eyes and stared at the man in blood-red robes. He said coldly, "Why should I give the splattering blood gang face? Why should I?" As soon as these words came out, the entire auction house went into an uproar. This young man was too unique. He actually dared to speak to Shui Tufu like this. "How dare you speak to me like this?" Shui Tufu's eyes were extremely cold. Suddenly his emperor pressure became as terrifying as a whirlwind, pressing toward Jun. The seal around him shattered with a crack. Then, the emperor pressure poured in like a torrent, enveloping Jun. Chapter 11:24. Jade Fate Bow. The collision of the two emperor auras was like the collision of two huge icebergs. The aftermath of the collision caused the entire auction house to tremble violently. Ziyang furrowed his brows and took half a step back. The bloody butcher, on the other hand, remained motionless in his seat. He looked at Ziyang, who was standing behind Zhuowen, in astonishment. Second-level Emperor Realm? Looking at Ziyang, who had taken half a step back, Zhuowen knew that Ziyang was at a disadvantage. Clearly, the bloody butcher's cultivation was higher than Ziyang's. He should be a second-level Emperor Realm expert. There's actually an Emperor Realm expert. It seems that this young man is not simple. The collision of Emperor auras lasted only a moment. Then, the bloody butcher and Ziyang withdrew their terrifying Emperor auras and looked at each other with fear in their eyes. The audience below the stage also looked at Zhuowen in surprise. Looking at Ziyang's appearance, it was obvious that he was a follower of this young man's servant. To be able to have a follower with such a cultivation, this young man's background was definitely not ordinary. At the same time, the audience was relieved that he dared to challenge Shui Luozi. "Senior Bloody Butcher, I think you should know the rules of our auction house. If you provoke our president, it won't be easy to deal with you." Lun Jia's eyes were gloomy as she stared at the bloody butcher and said indifferently. The bloody butcher grinned and said, "Don't worry. I know my limits. Since the 7 orifices exquisite elixir has been won by this little friend, I won't say anything. However, Azura City is very chaotic. I'm afraid that this little friend will accidentally die in the city. That would be a pity for the 7 orifices exquisite elixir." Hearing the bloody butcher's words, Zhuowen's pupils shrank and he replied indifferently, "Senior Bloody Butcher, you don't have to worry about this. This little one's life is very tough. I won't die so easily." "I hope so." The bloody butcher chuckled and stopped talking. He leaned back in his chair and waited for the last treasure to appear. After the 7 orifices exquisite elixir was settled, it was sent to Zhuowen's private room. After paying 1 million high-grade spirit stones, Zhuowen looked at the 7 orifices exquisite elixir in his hand with a burning gaze. "Brat, you took the 7 orifices exquisite pill from Shui Luozi. I'm afraid the splattering blood gang won't let this matter go. Be careful when you leave the auction house." Xiao Hei's solemn voice sounded in Zhuowen's mind. "Of course I know, but I'm not that easy to mess with." Zhuowen narrowed his eyes and said coldly. At this moment, Lun Jia, who was on the crystal platform, cleared her throat. Her eyes revealed a rare trace of excitement. She said loudly, "Ladies and gentlemen, the next item to be auctioned is the last treasure of this auction. At the same time, it is also the item that everyone is looking forward to the most." As she spoke, Lun Jia clapped her hands. Another support frame rose from the crystal platform under her feet. A strong light shone on the support frame. On the support frame was a 5-foot-long jade-colored bow. Its surface was filled with a faint emerald green light. Accompanying this green light was a terrifying pressure. This pressure was the Emperor's aura. In other words, this huge jade-colored bow was an Emperor weapon. Otherwise, it wouldn't be able to exude such a terrifying emperor's aura. Moreover, Yuan was keenly aware that this emperor's aura was even more terrifying than the carefree sword. This jade-colored bow is called the Jade Fate Bow. It is a mid-grade emperor weapon. Several hundred years ago, in the Bitter Sea near Azura Island, two mid-grade emperor realm powerhouses fought. The sky darkened and the earth darkened. In the end, one of them died and the other was injured. The emperor weapon in the hands of the dead emperor realm powerhouse was this Jade Fate Bow. This Jade Fate Bow was accidentally fished out from the shore of the Bitter Sea by the president of the Jianing auction house. I believe that I don't need to introduce the power of this emperor weapon. Everyone should know about it. After Lun Jia finished speaking, her gaze faintly looked at the 4 seats in the remote corners of the second floor. These 4 seats naturally included the Bloody Butcher, who had already pulled open the curtains. The other 3 people were hidden behind the curtains. One could only vaguely see their figures. Obviously, the owners of the other 3 seats were also powerful Emperor Realm powerhouses. It was just that they didn't want to expose themselves. The starting price of the Jade Fate Bow is 1 million high-grade spirit stones. Each bid must not be lower than 100,000 high-grade spirit stones. The bidding starts now. Lun Jia's words immediately caused many people to gasp. Previously, the starting price of the 7 Orifices exquisite pill was 1 million mid-grade spirit stones. It was already exaggerated enough. Now, the starting price of the Jade Fate Bow had increased by 1,000 times. It required 1 million high-grade spirit stones. This was indeed a little terrifying. Many warriors below shook their heads. They all knew that the price of the Jade Fate Bow was so terrifying that it wasn't something that they could participate in. Only the Emperor Realm powerhouses on the second floor were qualified to compete for this Emperor weapon. The Jianing auction house is really shady. They actually set the starting price so high. Yuan was also shocked by the starting price of the Jade Fate Bow. Even though he was rich, he probably didn't have enough spirit stones to compete in such a bidding war. You don't need this item and there's no need for you to participate in the bidding war. With the slaughtering oath-breaking blade, this Jade Fate Bow is of little value to you. Now that you've obtained the 7 Orifices exquisite pill, I'm afraid that many people have their eyes on you. I think you should take advantage of this opportunity and leave quickly. Xiao Hei's voice suddenly rang out. Zhuowen nodded and quietly stood up. Under the cover of the clamor, he left the box. However, Zhuowen didn't notice that Xue Luozi was staring at his back as he left the box. Xue Luozi sneered and said in a low voice, "You can't escape. So what if you bought the 7 Orifices exquisite pill? That thing will be mine sooner or later. Father, please send the left and right protectors to assist me." Xue Luozi raised his head and looked at the Bloody Butcher. The Bloody Butcher nodded and replied, "Do it cleanly. Don't leave anyone alive. I have already instructed the left and right protectors to head to your box. You should be able to meet them once you leave." Upon hearing this, Xue Luozi's lips curled into a cold smile. He nodded and left his box to meet up with the left and right protectors. "Crown Prince, Xue Luozi has gone out. I'm afraid he wants to find that young man and snatch the 7 Orifices exquisite pill." The black-robed old man in the box next to Yama Crown Prince sensed something and whispered to him. It seems that Xue Luozi won't give up easily. Today, even the Bloody Butcher, the leader of the Splattering Blood Gang, is here. I'm afraid that the left and right protectors of the Splattering Blood Gang are also here. 2 Emperor Realm experts and Xue Luozi, a peak heavenly master. I'm afraid that young man is doomed. The corners of Yama Crown Prince's mouth curled up slightly. Although his words were objective, the gloating expression on his face clearly revealed his inner thoughts. Yuan walked along the dark corridor until he reached the end and exited the Jianing auction house. At this moment, the entrance of the auction house was much quieter than before. "Master, I'm afraid we're being followed," Ziyang suddenly said in a low voice. Yuan narrowed his eyes and tilted his head slightly. He immediately saw 3 figures coming out of the passage behind him. The one in the lead was dressed in a blood-red robe and had a red vertical line between his eyebrows. It was Xue Luozi. The 2 people behind Xue Luozi were about 30 years old. They were dressed in blood-red robes. One of them held a saber in his left hand, while the other held a sword in his right hand. They looked quite strange, but the aura emitted from their bodies made Zhuowen somewhat fearful. 2 Emperor Realm experts? Zhuowen narrowed his eyes and his voice became cold. Xue Luozi was indeed a lingering spirit. Zhuowen had come out stealthily, but Xue Luozi still managed to track him. I've already said that in this chaotic Azura city, it's easy to encounter some unknown danger and then pay the price with your life. Xue Luozi made an exaggerated gesture with his hands, and the complacency in his eyes became more and more intense. Obviously, in his opinion, Zhuowen was like a turtle in a jar. Even if Zhuowen had an Emperor Realm expert, so what? Xue Luozi had 2 Emperor Realm experts, his left and right protectors, while he was a peak celestial master. No matter how one looked at it, their strength was extremely inferior. Therefore, Xue Luozi didn't put Zhuowen and Xiang in his eyes. Master, what should we do? Xiang looked at Zhuowen and inquired. Let's go. This place is not suitable for a battle. Let's get out of Azura city first. Zhuowen spoke in a low voice. Immediately, the 2 of them took a step forward in an extremely tacit manner. They directly rushed in opposite directions at an extremely fast speed. Go after them. Xue Luozi was startled at first, but then he shouted with a gloomy face. He rushed out with his left and right protectors, closely following Zhuowen and Xiang. Xue Luozi, the young master of the Splashing Blood Gang, and the 2 people behind him seemed to be the left and right protectors of the Splashing Blood Gang. They are genuine Emperor Realm experts. Who are those 2 people? It seems that Xue Luozi is chasing them. In the city, many people recognized Xue Luozi and the left and right protectors behind Zhuowen. At the same time, they were quite puzzled by Zhuowen and Xiang. However, since Xue Luozi had sent the left and right protectors to chase after them, everyone knew that these 2 people were definitely not ordinary. The 5 people were extremely fast, and in the blink of an eye, they rushed out of Azura city. After about an hour of chasing, Zhuowen and Xiang finally stopped on a blood-red hill. Chapter 11:25. Blood Eye Escape? Why are you running away? Zhuowen slowly turned around with Xiang and stared at Xue Luozi with a cold smile. You actually dare to face us? Where does your courage come from? Or do you have a death wish? Xue Luozi was stunned by Zhuowen's fearless attitude. Zhuowen ignored Xue Luozi and said to Xiang, Xiang, you have the Freedom Sword. You should be able to deal with 2 level 1 emperors, right? Master, don't worry. 2 first-level emperors are nothing in my eyes. Xiang lowered his head slightly and said proudly. Although the left and right protectors of the blood-splashing gang had the same cultivation level as Xiang, they didn't have any emperor weapons. Their weapons were only royal-level spiritual treasures. However, Xiang had the Freedom Sword, an emperor weapon. The strength of a great emperor realm cultivator with a great emperor weapon far exceeded that of a great emperor of the same level. This was why Xiang had the confidence to face off against 2 great emperors of the same level. What an arrogant fellow. You're just a first-level martial emperor. How dare you say that you don't care about us? I really don't know where your confidence comes from, the left protector said to Xiang with a sinister look in his eyes. The protector of the right didn't look any better. Being looked down upon by a great emperor of the same level was an insult to their dignity. The master is so arrogant and ignorant. Even his servant is so arrogant. Like master, like servant. Xue Luozi sneered, his voice full of sarcasm. Young gang leader. This person is so arrogant and conceited. Let's teach him a good lesson. The left and right protectors glared at Xue Luozi, their eyes filled with anger. Xiang's words had completely infuriated them. Just kill him. Is there a need to teach him a lesson? Xue Luozi chuckled. When the left and right protectors heard this, they looked at each other and smiled coldly. We understand what young sect leader means. Don't worry, this person will definitely not be alive. Go. As for this early-stage heavenly venerable ant, just leave him to me. Xue Luozi waved his hand, his eyes focused on Zhuowen. His cold eyes were like a viper hiding in the dark, staring at Tun. The two protectors nodded. Wielding their swords and sabers, they charged towards Xiang Tianzuan in a triangular formation. The corners of their mouths curled into a sinister smile. "Good timing!" Xiang shouted. With a flick of his finger, the snow-white carefree sword appeared in his hand. A surge of emperor power gushed out, causing the aura in Xiang Tianzuan's body to rise to its peak. Bang! In an instant, the two protectors and Ziyang collided. Soon after, a terrifying energy fluctuation erupted between the two. Following which, the two protectors' faces slightly changed as they discovered that the carefree sword in Ziyang's hand actually emitted a power that caused them to feel fear in their hearts. Dun, dun, dun. The three of them separated as soon as they collided. Ziyang took 3 steps back, while the two protectors took 7 or 8 steps back. An emperor weapon? The two protectors could not help but exclaim as they stared fixedly at the carefree sword in Ziyang's hand. They had never expected Ziyang to possess an emperor weapon. No wonder he had said that he did not place the two of them in his eyes. Xueluozi also looked at the carefree sword in Ziyang's hand in surprise and frowned slightly. The two protectors retreated to Xueluozi's side and whispered to him, "Young sect leader, what should we do? This person has an emperor weapon. Even if the two of us join forces, I'm afraid it will be difficult for us to defeat him." Xueluozi's eyes darkened when he heard this. He said coldly, "I must get the 7 orifices exquisite elixir. Although this guy has an emperor weapon, the two protectors should be able to delay the purple-clothed young man for a while. Once I've dealt with this ant, we'll retreat." The two protectors looked embarrassed when they heard this. However, since Xueluozi had spoken, they could not refuse. "Young sect leader, I hope you can deal with him as soon as possible. The strength of an Emperor Realm warrior with an Emperor weapon is terrifying. Even if the two of us join forces, we won't be able to hold on for long." The two protectors clenched their teeth and agreed. Shortly after, they shot out together. Once again, they shot towards the purple sun in a triangular formation. At the same time, the star energy within their bodies gushed out. 18 stars descended. Clearly, the two of them were going all out. "Master!" That Xueluozi. Ziyang naturally heard the conversation between Xueluozi and the two protectors. He could not help but look hesitant. Apparently, he was worried that Yuan was no match for Xueluozi. "Don't worry, I'll deal with Xueluozi." Zhuowen waved his hand. Seeing Zhuowen's appearance, Ziyang nodded. Holding the carefree sword in his hand, he once again shot out explosively, directly clashing with the two protectors. Bang, bang, bang. The tremors of the sky and the earth resounded over the hill. It was as if the whole sky was about to be torn apart by the 3 Emperor Realm experts. "It's your turn now. You'll end up miserable after taking my 7 orifices exquisite elixir. It's useless to repent now." Xueluozi grinned. He stomped his foot and rushed out like a bolt of crimson lightning. At the same time, he threw out his right palm that was ready to strike at Zhuowen's chest. "Nirvana of the great sun." Zhuowen let out a low roar. Golden light burst out like a blazing sun, transforming into 4 heads and 8 arms. One of the arms turned into a palm and blasted out, while the other 7 arms enveloped Xueluozi from different angles. The whistling wind tore through the air, emitting a sharp whistle that was extremely frightening. Boom! When the 2 palms collided, a terrifying gust of wind erupted. Xueluozi naturally sensed the 7 arms coming at him from 7 different angles. His eyes flashed coldly, and he stomped his feet in the air, spinning rapidly. A stream of blood-red energy gushed out as he spun, forming a spiral-shaped blood scab on his surface. Bang! The 7 arms reached the surface of the blood scab. Soon after, Zhuowen was shocked to discover that the blood scab that had suddenly appeared was as tough as armor. The strength of the 7 arms was actually unable to break through the defense of the blood scab. "Is this all you've got? You're really weak." A cold voice sounded. Then, the blood scab spun at a high speed. The hissing sound produced by the friction between the blood scab and the air was extremely ear-piercing. Thump, 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 thump. A terrifying penetrating force came from the front end of the blood scab, causing Zhuowen's pupils to shrink. He could not help but step back. Divine Sun Cauldron. After taking dozens of steps back, Zhuowen roared. The Divine Sun Cauldron rose from the spirit ring. A terrifying sun fire burst out and wrapped Zhuowen, forming a fire defense. Bang! The blood scab slammed into the fire defense. The spinning body suddenly slowed down a lot, almost coming to a stop. Swoosh! Shueluazi suddenly stepped out of the blood scab, flicked his right hand, and took out a blood-red spear. He thrust the spear forward, and it shot towards the fire barrier like a rainbow. Break! Shueluazi shouted coldly. The crimson spear pressed against the fire defense and began to spin like an electric drill. A terrifying force swept out, and the fire defense was easily penetrated by the crimson spear. Zhuowen's heart was alarmed as she immediately withdrew from her four-headed, eight-armed state. With a twist of her waist, she dodged the blood-colored long spear that was aimed at her vitals. Slaughter momentum! Zhuowen took out the 7 slaughter blade, and a terrifying slaughter force burst out from his body. Suddenly, 8 huge blood seas appeared in the void. The 8 blood seas surrounded Zhuowen like 8 blood dragons, making Zhuowen look like a god descending to the mortal world. Kill! Zhuowen slashed down with his blade. The slaughter momentum was like a huge mountain, crushing down on Shueluazi's body. However, this feeling only lasted for a moment before it was broken by Shueluazi. Clang! Shueluazi raised his crimson spear and blocked the 7 slaughter blade. The blade brushed past the spear, creating dazzling sparks. However, Zhuowen's eyes were still cold and ruthless. He waved his left hand and a crimson spear appeared in his empty left hand. The surface of the crimson spear was swirling with a crimson vortex, which looked quite strange. The moment the 7 slaughter blade was blocked, the crimson spear turned into a crimson light and rushed toward Shueluazi's forehead, trying to pierce through it. Is this guy really at the early stage of Heavenly Master? Shueluazi cursed in a low voice as he felt the crimson spear coming closer and closer. Zhuowen's battle strength was somewhat beyond his expectation. Crimson eye open. With no time to think, Shueluazi let out a low roar, and the red vertical mark between his eyebrows split to the left and right, revealing a bloody eye. A ray of bloody light shot out from the bloody eye and collided with the tip of the bloody spear. The moment the crimson light hit the tip of the spear, Zhuowen was shocked to find that an extremely terrifying force came from the end of the spear. His right hand was then shaken by this force, and the crimson spear flew out of his hand. Then, Zhuowen stamped his feet and immediately retreated dozens of steps. He looked at the crimson eye between Shueluazi's eyebrows with a hint of fear. This crimson eye should be Shueluazi's armor soul. It can release a terrifying crimson light with a strong penetrating power. Boy, be careful. Xiao Hei's voice suddenly sounded in his mind. What a strange armor soul. Zhuowen's eyes narrowed as he muttered in a low voice. Chapter 1126. Sword Fire Ultimacy, you forced me to use my blood eye? Shueluazi looked at Zhuowen with a solemn expression. Although Zhuowen was only at the early stage of Heavenly Master, Zhuowen was able to push him to this extent. Zhuowen stood there quietly, but his eyes were full of fighting spirit. Shueluazi was a genius of the blood-splashing gang. Although he might not be as good as Di Ba, Evil Moon, and Yama Crown Prince, his strength was far beyond that of an ordinary warrior at the peak of the Celestial Master Realm. Zhuowen had just advanced to the Heavenly Master Realm, so he wanted to see how strong a peak Heavenly Master like Shueluazi was. Again, Zhuowen roared furiously. His foot suddenly stepped forward, and a frightening force spread from under his feet. Immediately, the former shot out like a cannonball. Pumph! You forced me to use my blood eye. Do you think you're still qualified to fight me? Shueluazi sneered. The blood eye between his eyebrows split open again, and a ray of blood-red light shot out like a small snake, aiming at Zhuowen's vital parts with great precision. Zhuowen's expression changed slightly. He changed the 7-kill saber's momentum and slashed sideways at the ray of light. Clang! A crisp sound rang out. Zhuowen's expression changed drastically when he found that the power of the ray of light was even more terrifying than before. Then, stomping on the air, Zhuowen's waist spun. The line of blood swept past Zhuowen's hair and left behind a bloody scar on the side of Zhuowen's face. Traces of blood flowed down his face and dripped down from his chin, causing Zhuowen to appear somewhat malevolent at this moment. Feeling the burning pain on the side of his face, Zhuowen's eyes turned cold. The power of Shueluozi's blood eye was beyond his expectation. "Where are you looking?" Just as Zhuowen narrowly dodged the attack of the bloodline, a sinister laugh suddenly sounded out. Soon after, an intense whistling sound of wind sounded in Zhuowen's ears. His messy black hair was pulled into a mess by the sound of the wind. Zhuowen jerked his head back and saw that Shueluozi was right in front of him. Shueluozi raised his spear above his head and smashed it down. Bang! Zhuowen raised the 7 kills blade to block before him. However, due to the haste with which he blocked the spear, the instant the great spear descended, Zhuowen felt his palm go numb. He was forced to take tens of steps back as a terrifying power spread out from his feet. Every step he took back caused cracks to appear on the ground. "What qualifications do you have to compete with me now?" Shueluozi stood with his spear and stared indifferently at Zhuowen. "Are you saying that I'm not qualified?" After stabilizing his body, Zhuowen slowly stood up at a steady pace. A demonic aura surged out from within his body. Immediately, his black hair was dyed red. A terrifying bloody aura erupted, causing the strength in Zhuowen's body to be stretched to the limit. First-level bedevilment. With a low shout, Zhuowen rushed out again. At this moment, his aura was much stronger than before. This was the power increase brought about by the first-level bedevilment. "Kill!" Zhuowen rushed toward Shueluozi. He raised the 7 kills blade in his right hand and a sharp blade aura gushed out, causing Shueluozi to feel a little frightened. "Blood eye!" Shueluozi opened his blood eye again and a blood line instantly shot out toward Zhuowen's forehead. He wanted to completely crush Zhuowen. Second-level bedevilment. Demon eye open. Feeling the powerful bloodline rushing out again, Zhuowen did not hesitate to open the second-level bedevilment. His blood hair grew to his waist and a pitch-black demon eye opened between his eyebrows. The bloodline turned into a blood-red light in midair and the demon eye emitted a terrifying demonic aura. This demonic aura was like a whirlpool, devouring the bloodline. "What? The power of the blood eye has been devoured? What is this?" Looking at the bloodline being devoured by the demon eye, Shueluozi was stunned at first and then revealed a look of disbelief. Slash! Zhuowen answered Shueluozi by slashing out with the 7 kills blade again. At this moment, the 7 kills blade was infused with the slaughter momentum and slaughter demonic aura. The combination of the two made the 7 kills blade emit a terrifying blood light. Block! Shueluozi could faintly feel the terrifying power contained in the 7 kills blade at this moment. He growled and raised his blood spear, intending to block the 7 kills blade. Clang! The sound of gold and iron colliding suddenly rang out. Shueluozi was shocked to find that the tremendous force coming from his blood spear was like crushing a towering mountain. With a muffled groan, Shueluozi bent his knees slightly and was almost crushed to the ground by this tremendous force. What a terrifying power! Shueluozi's expression changed drastically. However, Zhuowen raised the 7 slaughter blade once again and slashed down. Shueluozi was scared out of his wits when he saw this. He rolled away in a sorry state and dodged the blade. Boom! The blade slammed into the ground, creating a large crater. Dust rose into the air and a muffled thunder-like sound echoed in the surroundings. Escape? Do you think you can escape? Morning Seal. After missing his attack, Zhuowen's cold eyes converged on Shueluozi, who was not far away. He changed the seal in his hand and a sorrowful curse power gushed out and spread all over Shueluozi's body, causing him to stagnate. Damn it! What kind of secret technique is this? How can it weaken my power? Shueluozi's face changed dramatically when he felt the weakening power in his body. Kill! Zhuowen was not going to let Shueluozi off. He rushed forward again and slashed out with his 7 kill saber. The endless killing aura crushed down on Shueluozi, causing Shueluazi to feel a trace of terror. Bang, bang, bang. After slashing out 3 times in a row, Shueluazi was forced to retreat. The spear in his hand became unstable and was almost sent flying by Zhuowen's attack. The last slash. Zhuowen suddenly jumped up and lowered his right knee. A terrifying weight of 1,000 pounds fell down. He held the 7-kill saber in his right hand and swung it down. Boom! Suddenly, Shueluazi spat out a mouthful of blood. The web between his thumb and forefinger split open, and blood flowed out. The blood spear was blasted into the sky by the saber force and finally stabbed into the ground. Dun, 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 dun. Shueluazi kept retreating until he was dozens of steps away. He was gasping for breath and a trace of blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. He stared at Zhuowen in horror. He did not expect that Zhuowen could display such a terrifying battle strength. Bang, bang. The moment Shueluazi retreated, 2 muffled groans came from the void. Then the left and right protectors, who were holding sabers and swords, fell to the ground awkwardly. Both of them spat out a mouthful of blood and looked somewhat dispirited. The left and right protectors, who were barely able to support themselves, came to Shueluazi's side. The left protector said in a hoarse voice, "Young master, we can't hold on any longer. Let's go." Shueluazi's face was as pale as snow. Even the left and right protectors had been defeated, and he was no match for Zhuowen. At this moment, he began to regret robbing Zhuowen. It was like pushing himself into a fire pit. "Let's go." Shueluazi's eyes flickered. He said to the left and right protectors and immediately retreated. "Ziyang, stop them. Don't let any of them go," Zhuowen said in a clear voice. He stomped his foot and shot out explosively. His target was none other than Shueluazi, who had fled at the first possible moment. "Yes, master." A respectful voice came from the void. Then, 9 purple stars fell from the sky and landed dozens of meters in front of Shueluazi. Shueluazi involuntarily stopped in his tracks. "If you want to catch up with our young master, you'll have to go through us first." The left and right protectors knew that Shueluazi had been defeated by Zhuowen. Therefore, when they saw Zhuowen chasing after them, they attacked him without hesitation. They wanted to kill him to prevent future troubles. "How dare you attack my master?" However, at the moment when the left and right protectors attacked, a thunderous voice sounded from the void. Then, Ziyang took a step forward and waved his carefree sword. A milky white energy burst forth and blasted toward the left and right protectors. The left and right protectors, who had attacked Zhuowen, also felt the terror of the milky white energy. They had no choice but to change their attack and block it. Zhuowen brushed past the left and right protectors and rushed toward Shueluazi without stopping. "Bastard!" Shueluazi slowly turned around and gloomily stared at Zhuowen in front of him. He said in a low voice, "I'm the young master of the Splattering Blood Gang. I don't think you'll kill me over such a trivial matter and form an irreconcilable enmity with the Splattering Blood Gang. You want to kill me and take my treasure? Is this a trivial matter? How ridiculous! You're going to die today. Don't take any chances." Zhuowen sneered and rushed out without hesitation. Shueluazi's face changed slightly and he said coldly, "You forced me to do this. Don't blame me for being rude." With that, a scarlet ball the size of half a palm appeared in Shueluazi's hand. As soon as the ball appeared, Shueluazi threw it toward Zhuowen. Zhuowen frowned. He could faintly sense that this small blood-colored ball was not ordinary. Hence, he pushed off the ground and dashed to the side in an attempt to dodge this small ball that was flying towards him. Boom! Just as Zhuowen was about to go around the small blood-red ball, it suddenly self-destructed. Following that, streams of blood qi transformed into rather viscous blood lines. Furthermore, there were thousands of these blood lines, densely packed together. It was an extremely terrifying sight. Bush, bush, bush. The blood lines rushed toward Zhuowen from all directions. They wanted to completely entangle Zhuowen and trap him. These blood lines were very fast. Zhuowen was caught off guard and was entangled by them. "Ha! You're the one who forced me to use this thing that my father gave me, so you can die without regrets." The moment Zhuowen was entangled by the bloodlines, Shueluazi laughed and thrust his great spear toward Zhuowen's heart. He wanted to kill him completely. However, Zhuowen was extremely calm. A surge of mental energy gushed out from his Naiwen palace. Then he released a sword light from his spirit ring. It was the ultimate sword array. Let's try the power of the sword fire profound. Chapter 1127. Shueluazi escaped. Once the sword fire profound was unleashed, the ultimate limitless sword formation was practically covered in flames. With Zhuowen as the center, the area of dozens of miles was actually covered in a terrifying sea of flames. Numerous flaming swords floated around Zhuowen, illuminating Zhuowen's cold and indifferent face, making him appear even more demonic. Shueluazi, who was engulfed by the endless sword fire, let out a miserable shriek. His figure was constantly twitching in the flames, but he simply couldn't break free from the power of the sword fire. Slash! 10 core flaming swords shot out and pierced Shueluazi's back. Shueluazi's screams came to an abrupt end as he was pierced by the 10 core flaming swords and died. Zhuowen waved his sleeve, and the countless sword fires disappeared. Numerous long swords surrounded Zhuowen's body. Then, Zhuowen walked towards Shueluazi step by step, his eyes as calm as water. 6th grade origin array? You're a 6th grade arcana master? No wonder you didn't hesitate to sell immortal stones at such a high price. At this moment, Shueluazi was almost burnt to a crisp by the sword fire. However, as a peak celestial master, his vitality was naturally extremely strong. Although he looked miserable, he would not die immediately. Now that you know, I think you should know what to do, right? I'll give you the dignity of a warrior. Kill yourself. Zhuowen said indifferently as he slowly stood in front of Shueluazi. Shueluazi's eyes flashed viciously as he said coldly, "Don't think that your plan is flawless. If I die, my father, the blood butcher, will not let you go." With that, Shueluazi folded his hands and slammed them in front of his forehead. With a muffled sound, Shueluazi's eyes bulged and his vitality slowly faded away. However, his eyes were still fixed on Zhuowen. The resentment in his eyes made Zhuowen frown slightly. Shueluazi had been severely injured by the sword fire ultimacy. He knew that even if he did not kill himself, he would be killed by Zhuowen. Since he was going to die anyway, he would rather commit suicide with dignity. I wonder if this guy's nascent soul was destroyed on its own? He frowned, feeling that something was wrong. He reached out with his right hand and pressed it against Shueluazi's abdomen, sending his yuan qi into his dantian. After confirming that the nascent soul had indeed dissipated, he was relieved. No. How could the nascent soul power in Shueluazi's dantian disappear so quickly? Even if he killed himself and destroyed his nascent soul, the power of his nascent soul shouldn't have dissipated so thoroughly in such a short period of time, right? A whistling sound rang in Zhuowen's ears. Immediately after, Zhuowen's pupils shrank as he discovered that the blood eye on Shueluazi's forehead had turned into a bloody light and fled in the direction of Azura City. This guy didn't die? Where do you think you're going? Zhuowen was initially startled when he saw the blood glow break through the air. Soon after, he let out a furious roar. His feet pushed off the ground and he chased after the blood glow. At the same time, 3 pairs of lightning wings were formed and spread out with his hands. His speed was as fast as lightning. Bastard! Remember, I Shueluazi will not let you go. Sensing that Zhuowen was chasing after him, the blood eye that had turned into a bloody light let out a hateful roar. Its speed soared again and it disappeared in front of Zhuowen's eyes almost instantaneously. Dozens of miles away, a thunderbolt flashed and turned into a figure. It was Zhuowen. The blood eye was too fast. After chasing for dozens of miles, Zhuowen lost track of it. What a cunning guy! He hid his nascent soul in the blood eye of his armor soul and directly left his body when I wasn't paying attention. Zhuowen's eyes flickered, and there was a trace of annoyance in his voice. The moment Shueluazi's voice sounded, he had already determined that Shueluazi's nascent soul was not in his dantian at all, but had been transferred to the blood eye of his armor soul. Xueluazi's armor soul is quite strange. It can actually hide his nascent soul. If you don't pay attention, it's really difficult to notice that he's not dead. Xiao Hei's voice was filled with surprise. Let's go. Let's go to Xiang and see the result. Since Xueluazi has escaped, I can't let the left and right protectors escape. Since the Splashing Blood Gang wants to kill me, I have to make them pay a certain price. Zhuowen said coldly. He turned around and rushed toward the area where Xiang and the left and right protectors were fighting. Boom, boom. At that moment, the battle between Ziyang and the left and right protectors had reached its climax. However, Ziyang, who possessed the unfettered sword, was clearly suppressing the left and right protectors. As for the left and right protectors, they were barely holding on. Break! Ziyang's long hair fluttered in the wind as he slashed the void with the freedom sword. The milky white halo on the surface of the sword became more and more blazing, and a terrifying power fell from the sky. Finally, the left and right protectors were like small boats that could capsize at any time in the ocean. They vomited blood and were blown away, unable to put up any resistance. Their presences had withered to the extreme. After defeating the left and right guardians, Ziyang did not show any mercy. In an instant, he arrived before the two of them. His right hand quickly tapped the acupoints on their chests, sealing their origin power within their bodies. They were unable to unleash any power at all. Master! After doing this, Xiang noticed Zhuowen slowly approaching. He quickly cupped his hands respectfully and continued, Master! Where's Xueluazi? Humph! That guy hid his nascent soul in the blood eye and flew away. I was careless. Zhuowen snorted and said helplessly. However, when the left and right protectors heard this, they were quite shocked. A guy at the early stage of the Celestial Master Realm had forced Xueluazi to hide his nascent soul in the blood eye. This was Xueluazi's ultimate escape method, which he would only use in a life-and-death situation. However, Xueluazi had used this method in the face of a young man at the early stage of the Celestial Master Realm. Needless to say, the young man had forced Xueluazi into a life-and-death situation. Where did these two people come from? Feeling the terror of their master and servant, the left and right protectors looked at each other and licked their dry lips. Their hearts began to tremble. Originally, they had thought that they would be able to kill Xiang, but now it had turned out this way. This was something that they had never expected. Master, what should we do with these two people? Xiang suddenly pointed at the left and right protectors and asked respectfully. Just kill them. Now we have to leave this place quickly. Xueluazi fled to Azura City. Obviously, he was going to inform the Bloody Butcher. Zhuowen said with a gloomy look. Ziyang nodded when he heard this. Immediately, he waved the unfettered sword in his right hand. Two milky white cold glows shot out and directly penetrated the heavenly spirit acupoints on the heads of the left and right protectors, completely destroying their life force. Let's go. Let's find a more secluded place and hide for a month. It just so happens that I need to use this month to refine the 7 Orifices exquisite elixir. After a month, the limelight should be over. At that time, we can directly enter the Azura Blood Arena to seize the island's origin. After Xiang finished killing the left and right protectors, Yuan said something to him. Then, the two quietly left the place. In the Jianing auction house, the auction was unprecedentedly popular. This time, there were a total of 4 martial emperors bidding. At the same time, the Yama Crown Prince also participated in the bidding on behalf of Azura Lidi. For a time, the price of the Jade Fate Bow had almost reached a terrifying level. It had reached 50 million upper-grade spirit stones. 50 million upper-grade spirit stones. Is there anyone who is willing to increase the price? The corner of Luanjia's mouth curved into an extremely wide smile. In fact, the auction house had already profited greatly from the Jade Fate Bow this time. However, she still underestimated the Jade Fate Bow's attractiveness to martial emperors. After all, this was a mid-level emperor weapon. Even mid-level martial emperors would have a fiery attitude towards this kind of treasure. In the entire Azura Island, the strongest person was Azura Lidi. However, Azura Lidi was only a 4th-level martial emperor. He had just stepped into the mid-level martial emperor realm. Naturally, he would have a great desire for a mid-level emperor weapon. The 4 martial emperors bidding this time were only low-level martial emperors. Their desire for the Jade Fate Bow was even greater than that of mid-level martial emperors. This time, the one who raised the price to 50 million upper-grade spirit stones was the Yama Crown Prince. This time, the Yama Crown Prince was ordered by Azura Lidi to bring 1/10 of Azura Blood Manor's wealth. The Bloody Butcher frowned. Even he was a little shocked by the Yama Crown Prince's bid. This was because he had only brought 55 million upper-grade spirit stones with him this time. As for the other 3 martial emperors, they were all silent and no longer bid. Clearly, they couldn't afford a price higher than 50 million upper-grade spirit stones. 55 million. The Bloody Butcher clenched his teeth and placed all of his wealth on the bid. The Yama Crown Prince frowned. His eyes flickered as he said, 56 million. Hearing this, the Bloody Butcher's expression turned slightly ugly. He knew that he couldn't afford the price anymore. His gaze became gloomy for a long time. Luanjia's ability to read people's expressions was not bad. She immediately saw the strange expression on the Bloody Butcher's face. She shouted, "Is there anyone else who wants to increase the price?" Unfortunately, Luanjia was met with silence. Even the Bloody Butcher didn't speak. I think Brother Luanjia should be able to finalize the price this time. A price of 56 million should be pretty good." The Yama Crown Prince suddenly laughed. Although his laughter was rather casual, his heart was faintly aching. So many upper-grade spirit stones, it was almost equivalent to the Azura Blood Manor's annual income. However, it was all worth it to obtain the Jade Fate Bow. After all, a mid-grade emperor artifact like this was something that could only be found by chance. Spending 56 million upper-grade spirit stones was actually worth it. Since there is no one else who wants to increase the price, then the Jade Fate Bow belongs to the Yama Crown Prince of the Azura Blood Manor. Congratulations. Luanjia's words immediately caused a commotion. The Yama Crown Prince's smile grew even wider. The Bloody Butcher and the others' expressions became even more gloomy. However, they didn't dare to do anything to the Yama Crown Prince. After all, he had the entire Azura Blood Manor behind him. Whoosh! Chapter 1128. Late-Stage Heavenly Master Realm. Father, save me. A sharp voice resounded in the auction house, immediately attracting everyone's attention. Then, they saw a blood-red light suddenly appear in front of the Bloody Butcher. It was a strange blood-red eye. At this moment, the blood-red eye blinked in a very human-like manner, its eyes filled with panic. "My son, who did this to you?" The Bloody Butcher was stunned at first, then his eyes turned red. How could he not recognize that the blood-red eye was the armor soul of his son, Shweluazi? Is it Shweluazi? How did he end up in such a sorry state? Even his physical body is gone, leaving only a blood-red eye? The conversation between the Bloody Butcher and Shweluazi was not loud, but everyone in the auction house heard it clearly. Many people were shocked by Shweluazi's current state. "It's that guy. The Emperor Realm expert beside him has an Emperor weapon. That kid is even more strange. He's only an early-stage Heavenly Master, but his battle strength is extremely terrifying." Shweluazi recalled the scene just now, and fear and resentment rose in his heart. He has an Emperor weapon and an early-stage Heavenly Master brat. How did he manage to make you so miserable? The Bloody Butcher's eyes were extremely gloomy, and a murderous aura surged out of his body. "Father, you must avenge me. My physical body has been destroyed by that brat. If it weren't for the blood-red eye, I wouldn't be able to see you now." Shweluazi's voice became more and more resentful. "Pumph." The Bloody Butcher snorted coldly, and a terrifying Emperor Realm aura surged out. He said in a gloomy voice, "My son led the way. How dare he touch the people of the Splashing Blood Gang? I'll make him regret being born in this world. Father, come with me. I must avenge him. Otherwise, I won't be able to take this lying down." Shweluazi was overjoyed. He flew out of the auction house in the form of the blood-red eye, and the Bloody Butcher followed closely behind. The father and son soon disappeared from everyone's sight. Let's go. Let's follow them and have a look. Many people in the auction house were puzzled as they exited the auction house and followed behind the blood butcher and his son. In fact, everyone had a vague idea that the one who had put Xue Luozi in such a difficult situation was the young man who had competed with Xue Luozi twice in the auction house. Based on the conversation between the father and son, many people guessed that Xue Luozi was unwilling to let the 7 orifices exquisite pill fall into the hands of others. Therefore, he and the 2 guardians of the bloody splashing gang tailed the 2 young men in order to kill them and seize the pill. Now that Xue Luozi's body had been destroyed, what would happen to the left and right guardians of the blood splashing gang? These were 2 great emperors. Everyone was curious about the left and right protectors. Crown Prince. Should we follow them and take a look? The black-robed elder beside the Yama Crown Prince whispered. The Yama Crown Prince nodded and chuckled. Let's go. Let's go and take a look. The young man who was killed by Xue Luozi is probably not simple. He is only an early-stage heavenly master, yet he was able to force Xue Luozi into such a state. His battle strength is terrifying. His strength is indeed not bad, but he is still a far cry from you. If you were here, you could have killed Xue Luozi in one move, the black-robed elder said with a faint smile. Of course. The Yama Crown Prince lifted his chin and said proudly. After taking the Jade Fate Bow, he followed the crowd in the direction where the Blood Butcher and Xue Luozi had left. Under Xue Luozi's lead, the Bloody Butcher quickly arrived at the scene of the incident. Behind them were a large group of people. When the Bloody Butcher arrived, all he saw was a mess. It was obvious that an unprecedented battle had taken place here. The Blood Butcher's face was gloomy. He glanced around the small hill and soon found 2 corpses in a remote corner. When the Blood Butcher came in front of the 2 corpses, the veins on his forehead bulged. He let out an oppressive roar, like a muffled thunder echoing for dozens of miles. Don't let me find you. Once I find you, I will make you pay a price worse than death. Once the Bloody Butcher's roar rang out, it naturally attracted the attention of the gathered warriors. Their gazes were also cast towards the 2 corpses in front of the Bloody Butcher. Soon after, sounds of gasps rang out. The left and right protectors of the blood-splashing gang were first-level emperors. Now they had died in front of them. They were great emperors. This is crazy. The blood-splashing gang only has 3 great emperors. Now that 2 of them have died, the blood-splashing gang will suffer a great loss. Many people looked at the Blood Butcher with pity in their eyes. The blood-splashing gang was ranked last among the 3 great powers of Azura City. Now that 2 of their great emperors had died, they probably didn't have the qualifications to compete with the other 2 great powers. Oh, the left and right protectors of the blood-splashing gang are also dead? The Yama Crown Prince and the black-robed old man, who had just arrived, happened to see this scene. Their eyes revealed a trace of caution. And this time, the main characters, Zhuo Wenzheng and Ziyang, were constantly flashing through a dense forest not far away from the small hill. They were looking for a hidden place where they planned to go into seclusion for a month. Master, there is a cave ahead, but it seems like there is a powerful meta beast living inside. Ziyang's eyes lit up as he suddenly told Zhuan, "Let's go." Zhuan nodded. Following Ziyang's direction, the 2 of them increased their speed to the extreme. In less than half an incense stick's worth of time, they arrived at the cave Ziyang had mentioned. The cave was at the side of a cliff. The entrance was covered by flowers and grass. If one didn't look carefully, it would be difficult to see that there was a cave inside. Let's go. The 2 of them directly entered the cave. The cave wasn't very deep. The 2 of them quickly reached the end of the cave. As Ziyang had said, there was a meta beast hidden in the depths of the cave. However, the meta beast wasn't very strong. In a few moves, Ziyang dealt with it. I will arrange an illusion formation at the entrance of the cave. With the illusion formation, even if someone comes to the entrance, it will be difficult to discover the existence of the cave. After saying that, Zhuan took out the materials needed for the illusion formation from his spirit ring. After about 2 hours, he arranged a simple illusion formation and placed it at the entrance of the cave. Ziyang, I need to go into seclusion for a month. Help me protect me. After arranging the illusion formation, Yun returned to the cave and said to Xiang, Master, don't worry. Xiang will definitely do his best to protect you. Xiang nodded and said respectfully. Zhuan nodded and took out a praying mat from his spirit ring. Sitting on it, he flicked his right hand and took out the 7 orifices exquisite pill. I hope that this thing won't disappoint me. Zhuan muttered to himself. With a toss of his right hand, the 7 orifices exquisite pill was swallowed into his stomach. Boom! A thunderous sound rang out from Zhuan's body. Soon after, Yun felt a terrifying medicinal power spread out and spread through Zhuan's meridians at a frightening speed. The instant the medicinal power spread through his body, Yun could clearly feel his yuan power growing at a crazy speed. Could control the medicinal power well. Don't waste it. The instant the medicinal power of the 7 orifices exquisite pill erupted, Xiao Hei's solemn voice rang out. Zhuan nodded and calmed himself down. He began to control the medicinal power of the 7 orifices exquisite pill and gathered it in his dantian. When a certain amount was accumulated, Zhuan knew that he would be able to break through to a higher level. On the 10th day, a thunderous sound rang out from Zhuan's body. Xiang, who was sitting cross-legged not far from Zhuan, was startled awake by this sound. He looked at Zhuan, who was still sitting cross-legged with his eyes closed, in astonishment. Has he broken through to the intermediate heavenly sovereign level? It seems like the effects of the 7 orifices exquisite pill are pretty good. Master has broken through in just 10 days. I wonder if he will be able to break through to the late heavenly venerate realm in the remaining 20 days. Xiang muttered to himself. He was very clear about the medicinal effects of the 7 orifices exquisite pill. Not only could it raise a cultivator's cultivation by 2 small realms, but it also had a 50% chance of raising a cultivator's cultivation to the heavenly venerate realm. It could be said that it was an extremely powerful pill. Cultivation knew no time. Another 19 days passed. Seeing that the battle for the source of Azura Island was tomorrow, Xiang anxiously looked at Chun, who was still sitting cross-legged. I wonder if Master will be able to break through today. If he can't, I will have to wake him up in advance. Xiang muttered helplessly. Back then, Yun had already reminded him that he had to wake him up before the battle for the source of the island. Therefore, Xiang began to hesitate. Should he wake Zhuan up now? Boom boom boom. Suddenly, 3 low thunderous sounds rang out. Zhuan abruptly opened his eyes, and an aura several times more powerful than before flowed out. It actually swept up a slight gale in the entire cave. Master, you broke through? Xiang's eyes lit up as he asked. The corners of Zhuan's mouth curled up. He nodded and smiled. I was lucky enough to break through to the late heavenly venerate realm. Xiang, how long have I been in seclusion? 29 days. Tomorrow is the battle for the source of the island. Xiang said in a low voice. Zhuan nodded. It seems that there is still 1 more day. Before Zhuan could finish speaking, the ice saint rune in his left hand moved strangely. A wave of frightening cold chi surged out and formed a rather frightening snowstorm in the somewhat narrow cave. It's the little guy? Feeling the change in the Saint Ice rune, Zhuan's eyes lit up. He immediately thought of the profound soul ice butterfly. A month ago, he had placed the heart of the ice luan into the Saint Ice rune for the profound soul ice butterfly to refine. A month later, the Saint Ice rune sent out such a change. Clearly, the profound soul ice butterfly had successfully refined the heart of the ice luan. The profound soul ice butterfly is about to break through. Boy, let it out. Chapter 1129. Standing Azura Boom. Terrifying cold chi erupted, and soon after, the entire cave was filled with a snowstorm. In the center of the snowstorm, the profound soul ice butterfly let out a shrill cry, and a pair of thin wings suddenly spread out. A terrifying aura flowed out, and the aura of the profound soul ice butterfly also rose, almost reaching its limit. Bang! With a low muffled sound, the aura of the profound soul ice butterfly had reached an extremely terrifying level. It broke through. The profound soul ice butterfly's aura has soared from the sovereign level to the golden sovereign level. Zhuan looked at the profound soul ice butterfly, whose aura had become stronger, in astonishment. It seemed that the effect of the heart of the ice one was not bad. The aura is still strengthening? Does this profound soul ice butterfly plan to break through again? Looking at the profound soul ice butterfly, whose aura was still strengthening, Zhuowen's pupils shrank as he whispered in astonishment. An adult ice luan has the cultivation of an empyrean. The energy contained within is not something you can imagine. Perhaps this little fellow has obtained quite a bit of benefits from the heart of the ice luan. Xiao Hei's voice slowly rang out in Zhuowen's mind. Zhuowen nodded, his eyes revealing excitement as he stared at the profound soul ice butterfly in the sky. If the latter could really break through to the empyrean level, it would naturally be of great help to Zhuowen. Zhuan and Xing retreated to the entrance of the cave and silently watched the profound soul ice butterfly break through. Xiang's eyes revealed shock. He had clearly recognized the identity of the profound soul ice butterfly. This was a meta-beast that had the potential to become a demon emperor, and the bloodline in its body was extremely high. He never thought that Zhuan would actually possess such a meta-beast. After about half an incense stick of time, the profound soul ice butterfly actually broke through to the early empyrean level, and the terrifying cold chi finally came to an abrupt stop. The black soul ice butterfly let out a long cry. Soon after, it landed beside Zhuowen and obediently rubbed itself against Zhuowen's chest. Its 5 colored eyes were filled with affection. Zhuowen patted the profound soul ice butterfly's head, but his eyes revealed a trace of emotion. This profound soul ice butterfly's talent was truly blessed by the heavens. As long as it had enough cold chi, the barrier of cultivation realm was not a problem in front of this little fellow. Don't overlook this little guy's potential. You didn't look for cold chi in the past, so this little guy's cultivation has stagnated. It's not like you humans, who rely on cultivation step by step. Instead, it relies on cold chi to increase its cultivation. If there is enough cold chi, this little guy can reach the peak of the Celestial Master Realm in a short time. If there is some opportunity, he can directly advance to the Emperor Realm and become a Demon Emperor, Blackie said very seriously. Zhuowen nodded. Xiao Hei was right. He had indeed neglected the growth of the profound soul ice butterfly, which led to the little fellow's cultivation not increasing much after following him for so long. It seems that I really need to properly cultivate this little fellow. Zhuowen nodded and sighed. The mystic soul ice butterfly's breakthrough was over, and the terrifying snowstorm in the cave had completely stopped. Master! We killed the left and right protectors of the Splashing Blood Gang and destroyed Xue Luozi's body. The Splashing Blood Gang won't let us off easily. It will be difficult for us to enter Azura City tomorrow, Xiang said with a frown. Zhuowen nodded and said indifferently, I know what to do. Tomorrow, I will enter Azura City alone. When the battle for the island's origin begins, the Splashing Blood Gang won't send too many people to search for us. At that time, you just need to wait for an opportunity to enter Azura City and wait for my orders. Hearing this, Xiang nodded and didn't refuse. He knew that Zhuowen had the 100 Transformation Divine Art, a mystical secret technique that could change one's appearance and aura. Therefore, he didn't feel that it was inappropriate for Zhuowen to sneak into Azura City. The night passed silently. On the second day, at the first glimmer of dawn, Zhuowen woke up from his cultivation state. He walked out of the cave and headed straight for Azura City. At the same time, his appearance slowly changed. His originally fair face became as dark as charcoal. Even the aura on his body became completely different from before. Even if Xiang was by Zhuowen's side, it would be difficult for him to recognize Zhuowen's true appearance. When he arrived at the gate of Azura City, Zhuowen narrowed his eyes and discovered that in addition to the city guards, there was another team. This team was dressed in blood-red clothes and had the insignia of the Splashing Blood Gang on them. At this moment, this group of people wearing blood-red clothes were staring at the people queuing at the city gate with dark and stern gazes. They were also holding a portrait in their hands. On the portrait, there were 2 people's heads. Zhuowen saw them from afar. Weren't these 2 heads him and Ziyang? That splashing blood gang really won't let this go, Zhuan muttered in a low voice. However, his expression was extremely calm. After using the 100 transformation technique, he wasn't afraid of being recognized by the splashing blood gang. The team slowly moved forward. Soon, it was Zhuan's turn. The leader of the splashing blood gang stopped him and compared him to the portrait before letting him pass. After smoothly entering Azura City, Zhuan discovered that Azura City was much more lively than a month ago. The battle for the island source is about to begin. It is said that the island master, Azura Lidi, has already entered the Azura Blood Arena and is personally presiding over this stage of the battle. This year's battle for the source seems to be much more intense than before. It is said that the geniuses of the other tribes on Azura Island have all gathered in Azura City. Even some geniuses from other islands have come. I wonder how many lucky people will be able to obtain the island source. My guess is that there are close to 1,000 young geniuses participating in this competition, but only 3 will be able to obtain the island source. This is truly the case of the strong weeding out the weak. As soon as Zhuan entered Azura City, the discussions in the surroundings were all about the battle for the island source. The degree of fervor almost made Zhuan smack his tongue. Everywhere he went, he could hear people discussing this topic. Let's go to the Azura Blood Arena. After Zhuan casually listened to the discussions around him, he took a step forward and headed straight for the Azura Blood Arena. The flow of people in the Azura Blood Arena was much more terrifying than in other places of Azura City. At a glance, there was a sea of people. It was almost impossible to see the end of the sea of people. However, these people were basically spectators. The real contestants had another passage that led directly to the inside of the Azura Blood Arena. After asking a few questions in the Azura Blood Arena, he came to the passage exclusive to the contestants. At the entrance of the passage, he showed the Azura medal and entered the Azura Blood Arena unimpeded. After passing through a long corridor, Zhuan appeared in the vast yellow land inside the Azura Blood Arena. At this moment, the 10 blood-red platforms on the yellow land had disappeared. At a glance, they were all yellow. In other places of the yellow land, there was also a large number of young warriors gathered. These warriors should be the contestants participating in the battle for the island source. What surprised Zhuan was that these young contestants were all celestial masters. The weakest among them was at the initial stage of the celestial master realm. Among them, there were more than a dozen at the peak of the celestial master realm. Among the nearly 1,000 martial artists, the dozen or so peak Empyrean martial artists were the most eye-catching. Everyone knew that there were only 3 spots for the island source, so they would definitely be selected from the dozen or so martial artists with the strongest cultivations. Among them, the most eye-catching ones were the Yama Crown Prince of the Azura Blood Mansion, Luanjia of the Jianing Auction House, the domineering Diba, and the gloomy Shueluazi of the Splashing Blood Gang. Zhuan narrowed his eyes and stared at Shueluazi. He was a little surprised. Shueluazi's body had been destroyed by him a month ago, but he had rebuilt his body so quickly. It seemed that the Bloody Butcher had spent a lot of effort on him. Moreover, Zhuan faintly felt that Shueluazi's aura seemed to be stronger than a month ago. He wondered what method the Bloody Butcher had used to restore Shueluazi, whose body had been destroyed, to such a perfect state. However, at this moment, Zhuan really did not put Shueluazi in his eyes. When he was at the initial stage of the Celestial Master Realm, he had already destroyed Shueluazi's body. Now that his cultivation had reached the late stage of the Celestial Master Realm, he would definitely crush Shueluazi. The opponents that Zhuan was most afraid of this time should be Diba and Yama Crown Prince, especially Yama Crown Prince. This person's strength should be above Diba's. After all, he had not entered the Emperor Realm, but he had the strength of the Emperor Realm. This was enough to show that this person was extraordinary. Around the yellow earth, there were extremely thick and tall walls. These tall walls surrounded the entire yellow earth arena in a ring shape. On the high walls, there were densely packed seats. At this moment, these seats were basically filled with people. Many people stood up one after another and cheered loudly. Bush, bush. Sonic booms suddenly burst out from the sky above the Azura Blood Arena. The sharp sound of tearing air resounded in the sky above the Azura Blood Arena, causing many people in the seats to cover their ears with their hands as fear appeared in their eyes. Very quickly, 3 figures appeared in the sky above the Azura Blood Arena. The person in the lead was wearing a long robe that alternated between black and red. Many human figures that were baring their fangs and brandishing their claws were drawn on the robe. It looked rather strange. It's the master of Azura Blood Manor, Lady Azura. As soon as the 3 figures appeared in the sky above the arena, there was an uproar in the surroundings. Most of the people's eyes fell on the person in the lead. Zhuowen raised his head slightly. His gaze also landed on this Azura standing on the ground. This person was not very old, appearing to be in his 30s. The strange thing was that this person's pupils were red, while the whites of his eyes were black. It was extremely compatible with the color of the long robe he wore. In particular, the terrifying aura of this person was as vast as the sea. When it leaked out, Yuan faintly felt a sense of trepidation, as if a bayonet had landed on his heart. Chapter 1130. Physical strength of the 2 people standing behind Azura Li Di. One wore a blood-red robe and his eyes were bloodthirsty. Zhuan was no stranger to this person. He was the leader of the blood-splashing gang, Bloody Butcher. The other person was an old man with a head full of white hair and an amiable smile on his face. Zhuan didn't need to guess to know that this old man was the president of the Jianing auction house, Lun He. The arrival of the 3 giants of Azura City immediately attracted the attention of countless people in the Azura Blood Arena. The originally noisy crowd on the high platform also stopped clamoring. For a moment, the entire Azura Blood Arena fell into a strange silence. Everyone should know that today is the day of the Azura Island source eruption. Every time the Azura Island erupts, there are only 3 source eruptions. In other words, only 3 cultivators can obtain the Azura Island source eruption. This time is no exception. Azura Li Di slowly opened his mouth. His low and hoarse voice was like the sound of a demon. It lingered in the air and resounded in everyone's ears. Hearing this, many of the participating cultivators in the yellow earth trembled. Although they were mentally prepared when they heard that there were only 3 spots, they still felt a little embarrassed. There were nearly 1,000 cultivators, but only 3 could successfully obtain the source eruption. It had to be said that the elimination rate was too high. I won't beat around the bush. The island's source eruption is tens of thousands of feet below the yellow earth. There's a strange space there. Every time the island's source eruption, 3 source eruptions will appear in that space. At the same time, countless blood crystals will erupt from that space. If you are lucky, you may be able to obtain the source of the blood crystals. As Azura Li Di spoke, he shook his sleeve. Immediately, a dark light swept out from his sleeve. Then, it turned into a spiral-shaped building that looked like a sharp drill bit in the air above the Azura Blood Arena. Press down. Azura Li Di stretched out his right hand and the huge spiral-shaped building was caught in his hand. Then, he ruthlessly slammed it into the center of the yellow earth. Bang! The spiral-shaped building fell from the sky and heavily slammed into the center of the yellow earth. Under this terrifying force, the building plunged into the center of the yellow earth. Then, with a dazzling speed, it plunged into the depths of the earth. Moreover, Zhuowen's keen senses discovered that the moment the spiral-shaped building drilled into the ground, it emitted a black and red light. Then, under the eyes of the crowd, the building began to grow, until it was tens of thousands of feet long. Azura Li Di. Azura Li Di. The Azura Li Di. Azura Li Di. A Li Di Azura Li Di. Azura Li Di. This is the real Azura Blood Arena. It goes from the surface to tens of thousands of feet deep. In the Azura Blood Arena, there are Azura gates. Every time you blast open a Azura gate, you will enter another narrow space. In this narrow space, you will definitely meet at least one opponent. After defeating your opponent, you will continue to blast open the next Azura gate. Azura Li Di said slowly. He explained the rules of the real Azura Blood Arena. Everyone revealed a look of understanding. The Azura Blood Arena went down layer by layer. The space would become narrower and narrower. The remaining warriors would also become more and more terrifying. The competition would also become more and more intense. In the end, the strongest 3 would be selected. Zhuan also revealed a look of understanding. When he first entered the Azura Blood Arena, his first impression was that it was too ordinary. It was not much different from an ordinary arena. With Azura Lidi's strength and status, it should not be possible. He also did not need to spend so much effort to create such an ordinary arena. Now, he realized that the real Azura Blood Arena had always been with Azura Lidi. Swoosh, swoosh. Azura Lidi waved his sleeve. Nearly 1,000 blood rays flew out and attached themselves to everyone's forehead. He said indifferently, "This is an Azura talisman. If you are defeated during the battle, you can use the Azura talisman to teleport yourself out of the Azura Blood Arena. Of course, the result of this is naturally elimination." Zhuan only felt a heat between his eyebrows. Soon after, a blood-red pattern appeared between his eyebrows. This should be the so-called Azura talisman. Moreover, Zhuan could also feel that this Azura talisman contained a trace of spatial power. This Azura Lidi should be right. By relying on this Azura talisman, they could indeed teleport themselves out of the Azura Blood Arena. Let's start now. At this moment, the strange space tens of thousands of feet underground should have already nurtured 3 island sources. Whoever is stronger will be qualified to obtain the island sources. Azura Lidi waved his sleeve and said indifferently, "Swoosh, swoosh." As soon as Azura Lidi's words came out, nearly 1,000 warriors in the yellow earth turned into afterimages. They rushed towards the countless Azura gates exposed on the surface of the Azura Blood Arena. Each of them chose an Azura gate and used brute force to shatter it. They directly rushed into the Azura gate. Zhuan arrived in front of an inconspicuous Azura gate. His right hand condensed a trace of Buddhist power. He punched out and shattered the Azura gate. With a stomp of his foot, he entered the depths of the Azura Blood Arena. As soon as he entered, Zhuan felt that the gravity inside was stronger than outside. His body could not help but become sluggish and his shoulders stiffened. However, after circulating Yuan power around his body, Zhuan slowly adapted to the environment of the Azura Blood Arena. Looking around, Zhuan realized that the space of the Azura Blood Arena was completely blood-red. The place he was in was similar to a secret chamber. On the other side of this space, there was another Azura gate. Boom! Before Zhuan could size up the Azura gate in front of him, traces of cracks appeared on the surface of the Azura gate. Shortly after, it burst open. An extremely muscular figure walked out from the back of the Azura gate, cursing and swearing. This person was extremely tall. He was almost twice as tall as Zhuan. When Zhuan stood in front of this person, he only reached the person's chest. Moreover, this person's muscles were extremely well developed. They bulged and bulged, looking extremely terrifying. Boom, boom, boom. This person walked over step by step. Every step he took caused the space to tremble violently. It was as if a small earthquake had occurred. Bang! When he arrived 10 meters in front of Zhuan, this person stretched out his right hand and slammed the 2-meter-long heavy sword on his back onto the ground. Immediately, the ground shook even more violently. However, Zhuan stood quietly in the same place. He was as immovable as a boulder. This tall and muscular man's cultivation was not bad. He was also in the late heavenly venerable realm, which was similar to Zhuan's. Coupled with his terrifying appearance, even cultivators of the same level would be somewhat traumatized by this person. This would affect their performance. The muscular man held the heavy sword in his right hand. He stared at Zhuan with a mocking gaze and said, "I say, kid, our cultivation is about the same. However, looking at your thin arms and legs, your combat strength should not be much. If you don't want to die, I advise you to activate the Azura talisman and get out of here. You don't have the qualifications to tell me to get out. The one I want to get out of here is you, not me," Zhuan said indifferently. The muscular man scratched his head and sneered, "It looks like you really aren't afraid of death. Since that's the case, don't blame me for being ruthless. If I accidentally kill you later, don't blame me for not warning you in advance." As he spoke, the muscular man strode forward. Although he was walking, each step he took was equivalent to 4 or 5 steps of an ordinary person, so his speed was fast to the point of being dazzled. Moreover, Yuan was keenly aware of the strong killing intent in this man's eyes. Obviously, this muscular man intended to take his life as soon as he stepped forward. Die! The burly man let out a shrill cry. The heavy sword brought with it a frightening whistling sound as it descended from the sky, slashing straight at Zhuo Wen. The heavy sword was simply too large and heavy. As it slashed down, it actually caused countless fierce winds to howl in the surroundings. 7 kills! Zhuo waved his right hand and the 7 kills saber landed in his palm. At the same time, 3 pairs of lightning wings grew out from his back. He stomped his feet and turned into a bolt of lightning, instantly circling to the muscular man's side. Boom! Terrifying power poured down, and the heavy sword smashed into the ground, causing the ground to begin to crack. Terrifying cracks appeared, and the entire space began to tremble once again. Kill! Jun, who had circled to the muscular man's side, shouted loudly. The 7 kills saber was infused with the killing force. He suddenly swept to the muscular man's back and slashed down with the saber. Clang! To Zhuowen's horror, the muscular man's skin was like steel. When the 7 kills saber slashed on the surface of his skin, it actually produced a metallic sound. It was actually unable to break through the man's physical defense. Ha! My physical body is comparable to a royal spiritual treasure. Even a royal spiritual treasure won't be able to break through my physical body. You can't do anything to me, but I can slowly torture you to death. The muscular man grinned hideously and swung his right hand. The heavy sword that had smashed onto the ground drew an arc and whizzed toward Zhuon behind him, wanting to completely tear him apart. Retreat! Zhuon suddenly retreated dozens of steps, barely dodging the terrifying heavy sword. His eyes gradually narrowed. You can't break through my physical body. What do you have to compete with me? You'd better get lost while it's still early. The muscular man swung the heavy sword and placed it on his shoulder. He stared at Zhuon mockingly. It seems that the island's origin battle is indeed full of crouching tigers and hidden dragons. Although your cultivation is only at the advanced stage of the Celestial Master Realm, your strength is already comparable to a warrior at the peak of the Celestial Master Realm. Zhuon slowly said. Of course. The brawny man smiled contentedly. Zhuo Wen's words made him feel very happy in his heart. However, compared to me, there's still a huge gap. Since you're so proud of your physical body, then I'll fight with you head-on. Let's see whose physical body is stronger. However, Zhuowen's next words caused the muscular man's smile to disappear. He looked at Zhuowen as if he was looking at an idiot. Was this kid crazy? His physical body was comparable to a royal spiritual treasure, but this guy actually wanted to fight with him head-on. He was simply courting death. However, what happened next made him abandon this idea. Great Sun Nirvana Fate. Chapter 1131. Azura Gate. Looking at the 3 Zhangtal Zhuan who had transformed into a 4-headed, 8-armed man, the burly man's eyes were a little dazed. He actually felt a tinge of fear and trepidation in his heart. At this moment, the pressure that Zhuon gave him was extremely strong. That 3 Zhangtal body and the blazing golden light gave him a feeling that he could not resist. Kill! Zhuon, who had transformed into a 4-headed, 8-armed man, roared and took a step forward. His entire body turned into a streak of golden lightning as he rapidly stepped towards the burly man. The burly man frowned slightly, but he did not show any signs of fear. His right hand held the hilt of his sword as he suddenly pulled it out. With a wild howl of the wind, he kicked the ground and shot out like a cannonball. Boom! The burly man's movements were rather nimble. He took advantage of Zhuowen's bosom and swung his heavy sword horizontally from the side, blasting towards Zhuowen's abdomen with a sharp whistling sound as if the air was being torn apart. Zhuowen grunted coldly as he stretched out his right arm that glowed with golden light, and then he suddenly swung it horizontally like a shield to block the heavy sword that slashed towards him, causing the sound of metal colliding to erupt. Feeling the huge force coming from the heavy sword, The burly man frowned slightly. His empty left hand was like a poisonous snake as it craftily swept toward Zhuowen's chest and abdomen. A surge of yuan qi swept out from the fingertips of his left hand, forming a sharp claw made out of qi. Boom! Unfortunately, Zhuowen's other arm quickly grabbed the burly man's left hand and then suddenly twisted it. A rather miserable cry rang out. Then, the burly man was shocked to find that his left hand had been directly broken by Zhuowen's huge force and was hanging down powerlessly. "Don't forget, I have 8 arms." Zhuowen's indifferent voice rang out. The moment he broke the burly man's left hand, an extremely dazzling golden light erupted from his remaining 6 arms and blasted towards the burly man. The terrifying huge force caused an extremely frightening hissing sound to ring out in the surroundings. "No. I admit defeat. Let me go." Feeling the strong whistling sound of the wind blowing in his face, the burly man's eyes were filled with fear, and he couldn't help but loudly beg for mercy and admit defeat. Unfortunately, Hun was unmoved, and his 6 arms continued to press forward. When the burly man made his move earlier, he had intended to kill Zhuowen. His eyes were filled with murderous intent. It was obvious that he intended to kill Zhuowen in this Azura bloody arena. Since the other party intended to kill him, Zhuowen would not be polite. An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. Boom! The muffled sound of fist force entering flesh resounded. Immediately, 6 terrifying forces exploded within the burly man's body. The burly man suddenly spat out a mouthful of fresh blood. His face became pale and bloodless. His entire body became soft and limp on the ground as though it had no bones. His breathing became extremely heavy. The 6 fist forces were extremely terrifying. Moreover, Zhuowen's 6 punches had struck the 6 vital points of the burly man, directly cutting off his life force. Slowly withdrawing his hand, Zhuowen looked indifferently at the burly man lying limp on the ground. He knew that the burly man, whose life force had been cut off by the fist forces, would not live for long. Therefore, he did not continue to attack. Instead, he strode towards the Azura gate that had just appeared. In the Azura bloody arena, every time an opponent was defeated, a new Azura gate would appear in the barrier ahead. Entering the new Azura gate, one would naturally encounter the elites who had survived the first battle. Only by winning again and again could one finally reach the strange space tens of thousands of feet below the Azura bloody arena and obtain the island source. At this moment, on the surface of the Azura bloody arena, there were streaks of blood-red light constantly flashing, revealing figures. These figures were the warriors who had been defeated and eliminated in the Azura bloody arena. Most of them had a dejected look on their faces as they walked towards the corners of the yellow earth, silently observing the warriors who had yet to be eliminated. This was because in the sky above the Azura bloody arena, there was a blood-red light screen. This light screen was divided into countless small sections, and each section displayed a battle. Clearly, it was the scene of the warriors who had passed the first battle and advanced to the second battle. Among them, the most eye-catching were 4 people. These 4 people were Yama Crown Prince, Diba, Luanjia, and Shueluzi. In every battle, the 4 of them finished off their opponents in an extremely clean manner. They were the first to arrive at the next Azura gate, silently waiting for their opponents to arrive. As for Zhuowen, his performance was not too eye-catching. Even in battle, he did not finish off his opponents in one move like Yama Crown Prince and the other 3. Instead, he fought casually, and at the same time, he honed his slaughter oath-breaking saber technique. After all, he was not very proficient in the slaughter saber technique. If he could use his opponents to hone his skills, his improvement would naturally be faster. It seems like the 3 spots this time will be among the 4 of them. Azura Standing Ground's gaze was basically focused on Yama Crown Prince and the other 3. As for the others, he was too lazy to look at them. This Diba is not simple. It is said that he came from the outer court of Splendid Spirit Island. Moreover, he is a monstrous genius who ranks 2nd on the Outer Court Heavenly Master list. I'm afraid that he will be a strong competitor for Yama Crown Prince, Shueluzi, and Luanjia. Lunhei smiled faintly. Diba is still not a match for Yama Crown Prince. However, Shueluzi and Luanjia should be careful. Especially Shueluazi. I heard that a mysterious youth destroyed his physical body a month ago. His strength should have been greatly reduced, right? Azura Standing Ground said meaningfully. There is such a thing? Shueluazi's strength is enough to rank in the top 3 among the younger generation in Azura City. How could he be so battered by a nameless youth? Lunhei was slightly surprised. Bloody Butcher's gaze was gloomy. He coldly snorted and said, "That guy used some despicable means to injure my son. Let's not talk about this matter anymore." Seeing Bloody Butcher's perfunctory attitude, Lunhei's eyes revealed a hint of contemplation. He then smiled mischievously and said, even if it was a sneak attack, he shouldn't be weak to be able to force Shueluazi into such a state. He should also be participating in the competition for the island's origin, right? That little bastard won't dare to come. I have arranged many people outside the city. If he enters the city, I will know immediately. At that time, it will be his doomsday, Bloody Butcher said coldly. That's a pity. If that guy had participated in the competition, it would have been quite interesting. Lunhei smiled meaningfully. Bloody Butcher coldly stared at Lunhei and said, "Lunhei, what do you mean?" "Nothing. Let's continue to watch the competition. After 4 rounds, the competition will become extremely fierce. At that time, the competition will reach its climax. At that time, we will know who will be eliminated." Lunhei shook his head and said with a smile. Bloody Butcher frowned slightly, but his heart sank to the extreme. Shueluazi's body had not been rebuilt for a long time. Although the aura of this body was stronger than before, Shueluazi had not had time to adapt to the new body. Therefore, the strength that he could display was weaker than before. Therefore, Bloody Butcher began to worry that Shueluazi would be eliminated by Yama Crown Prince, Diba, and Lunjia. After another 2 rounds of battles, Zhuowen stepped into the 4th Azura Gate. He knew that after 3 rounds of elimination, there would only be about 100 warriors left. Zhuowen also knew that the remaining 100 warriors were the true elites of the Azura Gate. Their battle prowess was much stronger than the average warrior. Boom! The Shura Gate on the side was instantly broken, and a slender figure appeared. This figure was actually a woman with a graceful figure. She was wearing a red cheongsam. The tight clothes outlined her extremely seductive figure. Her lips were cherry red, and a seductive aura exuded from her body. Dang dang dang. The woman also saw Zhuowen in front of her. Her round eyes gently blinked at Zhuowen, and a ripple of lust sprouted in the entire space. "Brother, you are so fast. You actually reached here faster than me. You must be very powerful." A sweet voice that could make one's heart soften slowly came out of the woman's mouth. Zhuowen could not help but feel a trace of numbness in his heart. Dang 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 dang. Dang dang dang. Very quickly, the lady in the cheongsam arrived in front of Zhuowen. Her pure white and soft hands were placed on Zhuowen's shoulders. A refreshing fragrance assailed his nostrils, causing Zhuowen's eyes to narrow as he revealed a comfortable expression. At the same time, the flames of lust in his heart were ignited by this fragrance, causing Zhuowen's cheeks to turn slightly red as a faint crimson color rose in his eyes. "Brother, what's the point of fighting and killing? Wouldn't it be better if we did something more enjoyable?" The woman in the cheongsam stuck out her tongue like an orchid. Her sweet voice and warm and soft hands caressed the desire in Zhuowen's heart. Looking at Zhuowen's appearance, the woman in the cheongsam revealed a trace of a feminine smile. Soon after, a cold light swept out from her palm and swept toward Zhuowen's neck. Clang. However, when this cold light reached Zhuowen's neck, it actually stopped abruptly. Moreover, it even emitted the sound of metal clashing. The woman in the cheongsam was shocked to discover that Zhuowen's neck revealed a trace of a blazing golden light. Her sure kill attack was actually unable to pierce through this golden light. "Have you always used this method to win before?" The instant the woman in the cheongsam revealed a stunned expression, Zhuowen's calm voice slowly sounded out, causing the woman's heart to be in chaos. She secretly felt that something was wrong. Her jade-like feet tapped on the ground as she planned to fly away. "You plan to run after a sneak attack? Do you think there is such a thing as a cheap shot?" Zhuowen's dense voice sounded out. His right hand grabbed the woman's jade-like arm. following which, a powerful force exploded. One could only hear a kacha sound resounding out. The woman's seemingly boneless right arm was directly crushed by Zhuowen's violent force. Puchi! The woman let out a sharp blood-curdling scream. She decisively waved the dagger in her right hand and cut off her left arm that was being pinched. Accompanied by a violent spurt of blood, she continuously retreated dozens of steps. Her face was pale as she looked at Zhuon. "You weren't charmed by me from the beginning? That was all an illusion that you displayed?" The woman in the cheongsam stared at Zhuon in front of her with a deathly pale face and said in a low voice. Zhuon was a little surprised by the decisiveness of the woman in the cheongsam. He nodded and said, "This trick of yours can only be said to be a little low level. It won't work on me at all." You win. Chapter 1132. Long when after the cheongsam woman left, Zhuon resolutely blasted away the Shura gate in front of him. The next two Shura gates he encountered were not too difficult for Zhuon to deal with. After entangling with them for a while, Zhuon easily defeated them and successfully reached the bottom of the Azura Blood Arena. At the bottom of the Azura Blood Field, there was a blood-colored rock space. In the center of this space, there was a blood-colored sphere that was about 100 feet in size. Thick blood-colored tubes extended from the sphere. There were a total of 12 tubes, and at the end of each tube, there were 12 Azura gates. After arriving at this space, Zhuon raised his head and looked at the huge blood-red sphere in the center of the space with a hint of surprise in his eyes. The island's origin is in this blood-red sphere. Moreover, there are only 3 origin powers. There are a total of 12 people who have reached this place. If you want to obtain the 3 origin powers, then fight to your heart's content and eliminate your opponents. A strong voice resounded in this space. Zhuowen's eyes narrowed. He was naturally familiar with this voice. It belonged to Azura Lidi. Upon hearing this, Zhuon noticed that there were 11 other people in this space. All of them were at the peak of the Celestial Master Realm. Only Zhuon, who was at the Advanced Celestial Master Realm, stood out among the 12 people. You're lucky to reach the bottom of the Azura Blood Arena at the Advanced Celestial Master Realm. Xueluzi, who happened to be standing not far from Zhuon, stared at Zhuon with his scarlet eyes. At this moment, Zhuowen's appearance was that of a young man with a charcoal-black face. Therefore, Xueluzi did not recognize Zhuon even though he was standing in front of Zhuon. Zhuon glanced at Xueluzi indifferently and said, "I'll be lucky if I meet you." Hearing this, Xueluzi narrowed his eyes and sneered, "It seems that you are very confident in yourself. If you really meet me, I will let you know the taste of death." Zhuon couldn't be bothered to pay attention to Xueluzi. He wasn't afraid of Xueluzi even before his breakthrough. Now that his cultivation had jumped 2 levels, Xueluzi was even less of a match for him. Xueluzi naturally felt Zhuowen's disregard, and his eyes darkened. He was already in a bad mood when his body was destroyed by Zhuon a month ago. Now that a late-stage heavenly master dared to ignore him, his killing intent began to soar. "You'd better pray that you don't meet me next time. Otherwise, the consequences will be very serious," Xueluzi said coldly, his eyes fixed on the blood-red ball in front of him. The others didn't pay attention to Xueluzi and Zhuon. Most of their attention was on the blood-red ball, which contained their ultimate goal of participating in the Azura Blood Arena. The island's origin was something that could improve one's martial aptitude and cultivation. It was of great benefit to warriors. "Go in." A deep voice rang out. Yama Crown Prince took a step forward and turned into a shadow, rushing towards one of the Shura gates. Boom! With a punch, the Shura gate was smashed into pieces. Yama Crown Prince entered the Shura gate without hesitation. Bush, 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 bush. The moment Yama Crown Prince entered the Shura gate, Diba, Luanjia, and the others also chose a Shura gate and broke through it. "I hope I'm lucky enough to meet you." Xueluzi glanced at Zhuon indifferently and sneered. He also rushed into one of the Shura gates. "Maybe you'll regret it when the time comes." Zhuon chuckled and didn't stay any longer. He headed straight for the last Azura gate. After entering the Shura gate, Yuan saw a huge blood-red platform in front of him. The platform was several miles wide. Outside the blood-red platform was a pitch-black void. The blood-red platform was suspended in the void. Only when he looked around did Zhuo Wen discover that there were a total of 6 blood-red platforms like this in the surroundings. Moreover, there were 3 platforms on each level, while the third level was a relatively narrow platform. There were 3 balls of blood-red light on the platform. Origin energy surged out from the balls of light, causing Zhuo Wen to feel warm all over. The 3 blood-red balls of light on the third level should be the origin energy of Azura Island. Looking at the blood-red balls of light on the third level, Zhuo Wen's eyes burned with passion. The blood-red ball uses a 2-on-1 elimination system. The winner will go to the next level. In the end, only 3 people will be able to reach the third level. A majestic voice rang out in the blood-red ball. It was Azura Li Di who had spoken. A blood-red light pillar appeared in front of Zhuan. Then, a blue-clothed youth was teleported in front of Zhuan. However, the moment he appeared on the platform, his attention quickly fell on Zhuan. The confusion in his eyes was instantly replaced by a trace of vigilance. Zhuo Wen sized up the blue-clothed youth in front of him. He saw that this person was around 23 years old. His hair was tied up into a crown, and he had a tall figure. He had a dignified appearance and was handsome and confident. When his eyes opened and closed, an extremely frightening radiance erupted from them. The blue-clothed youth's aura was quite strong, and his cultivation had reached the peak of the Heavenly Master realm. However, his aura was slightly weaker than Xue Luozi's. In terms of battle strength, he should be weaker than Xue Luozi. Advanced Heavenly Master? The blue-clothed youth quickly sensed that Zhuo Wen's aura was only at the Advanced Heavenly Master realm. A strange light flashed in his eyes, and his vigilance gradually faded. It seems that I'm quite lucky. The blue-clothed youth slowly walked toward Zhuo Wen and chuckled. Do we still need to fight? Your cultivation is lower than mine, so your battle strength is definitely inferior to mine. You'd better give up. Zhuo Wen narrowed his eyes and said indifferently, Isn't it better to say this after you defeat me? I don't think it's necessary to say this now. It seems that you're going to fight with me? Well, I'll let you experience the difference between a peak Heavenly Master and an Advanced Heavenly Master. The blue-clothed youth placed his right hand on the hilt of the sword at his waist and clenched his fingers. Then, he stomped his foot on the ground, and a terrifying force gushed out. The blue-clothed youth rushed toward Zhuo Wen like a bolt of lightning. In an instant he was in front of Zhuo Wen. Swoosh! The blue-clothed young man let out a low cry. His right hand suddenly pulled back, and a dazzling cold glow surged out. The long sword at his waist was pulled out by him. Immediately, the blue-clothed young man slashed out horizontally. A blue sword glow rushed out, and like a poisonous snake, it pierced toward Zhuo Wen's vital points. 7 kills! Zhuo Wen shouted and took out the 7 kills saber. Then, he twisted his waist and dodged the terrifying sword light by a hair's breadth. At the same time, the 7 kills saber descended and slashed towards the blue-clothed youth's waist. Feeling the 7 kills saber at his waist, the blue-clothed youth's pupils shrank to the size of needles. His right hand suddenly moved horizontally, and the long sword that was stabbing toward Zhuo Wen's vital points was held horizontally at his waist. Clang! A sharp ear-piercing whistling sound was emitted when the blade and sword came into contact. Soon after, a frightening energy erupted. The two of them were actually in a deadlock in the air. The frightening energy ripples spread out like ripples in water, causing the surrounding space to faintly tremble. Your strength is not bad. The blue-clothed youth frowned slightly. The strength that Zhuo Wen had unleashed made him shudder with fear. Is it only not bad? Zhuo Wen said indifferently. Soon after, a terrifying slaughter force erupted from his body. 8 seas of blood surged out of the void and instantly enveloped the blue-clothed young man. The blue-clothed young man immediately felt a rather powerful pressure from the surroundings, causing his body to involuntarily fall downwards. It was as if a mountain was pressing down on him. The slaughter momentum had merged the Shura blood spear momentum and slaughter aura. Its power was much stronger than the Shura blood spear momentum. Even if Zhuo Wen did not evolve into 4 heads and 8 arms, He could still exert 8 times the power of the slaughter momentum with the 8 blood spears. Slash. With the help of the blood seas, Zhuan raised his right hand again, and the 7 kills saber slashed down, heavily hitting the long sword at the blue-clothed youth's waist. Clang. A crisp sound rang out. The long sword in the blue-clothed youth's hand was knocked away, and the 7 kills saber continued to sweep towards the blue-clothed youth, intending to cut him in half. The blue-clothed young man's pupils constricted to the size of needles. He shouted loudly and hurriedly retreated. Unfortunately, his speed was still slower than Zhuo Wen's blade. Although his waist and abdomen had avoided the 7 kills blade slash, his right hand that was holding the sword had been directly slashed by the 7 kills blade. Blood splashed out. The blue-clothed youth screamed and hurriedly retreated, holding his cut-off right hand. His whole body trembled, and he stared at Zhuan in fear. In just one confrontation he was defeated, and his arm was cut off by this black-faced youth. Was this guy really a warrior at the late stage of the Heavenly Master Realm? Do you still want to fight? Zhuan walked over slowly, pointing the 7 kills saber at the blue-clothed youth, and said lightly, "What's your name?" The blue-clothed youth suddenly asked. Zhuan narrowed his eyes and said lightly, "My name is Longwen." Longwen? Your strength is far beyond that of a warrior at the peak of the Heavenly Master Realm. Why have I never heard of you before? The blue-clothed youth asked unwillingly. There are countless warriors in the world, and there are many hidden experts that you don't know. Is it strange that you haven't heard of my name? Zhuo sneered. The blue-clothed youth took a deep look at Zhuan and said, "Maybe. I accept my defeat wholeheartedly. Goodbye." With that, the blue-clothed youth activated the Azura talisman and disappeared from the scarlet platform. Chapter 1133. Killing Shueluozi. The scarlet platform on the second level was twice as large as the first level. At this moment, a figure was sitting cross-legged opposite Zhuan. Perhaps because he had noticed Zhuowen's appearance, the figure slowly got up and turned around, staring at Zhuowen with a pair of scarlet eyes. "Your luck is not bad. You actually met me." This person's voice was rather cold. His eyes stared at Zhuowen as he spoke sinisterly. "I am indeed lucky to have met you, Shueluozi, the young master of the Splattering Blood Gang," Zhuan replied faintly. Outside the Azura Blood Arena, Azura Lidi, Luanhe, and the Bloody Butcher were quietly floating in the air. The 3 of them were silently staring at the remaining 3 light screens in the sky. The 3 light screens were showing the last 3 battles at the bottom of the Azura Blood Arena. When the 3 battles ended, the ownership of the 3 island origins would be determined. All the spectators on the countless viewing platforms quietened down. They held their breaths as their eyes continuously focused on the 3 light screens. This was the final battle, and it was also the battle that everyone had their eyes on. No one wanted to miss it. Luan Jia and Di Ba are going up against each other. It seems that Luan Jia is in a bad situation this time. The Bloody Butcher suddenly gloated at Luanhe. The 3 light screens showed Yama Crown Prince against a black-clothed young man with a sword, Di Ba against Luan Jia, and Shueluozi against Yun. Luanhe's face turned slightly ugly. In fact, he was well aware of Di Ba's strength. Although Luan Jia's battle strength was far superior to ordinary warriors, there was still a gap between her and Di Ba. "Bloody Butcher, are you very proud?" Shueluozi's opponent is also not simple. "He may fail miserably when the time comes," Luanhe said somewhat angrily. The Bloody Butcher sneered and said, "You don't have to worry about that. He's just a late-stage Heavenly Master. Even if he has some strength, it's unlikely that he's a match for my son. You should be worried about your Luan Jia, huh?" Previously, Luanhe had been nagging about how Shueluozi's body was destroyed by Zhuowen a month ago, which made Bloody Butcher very unhappy. Now that Luan Jia had met Di Ba, he naturally would not let go of this opportunity to ridicule her. Luanhe snorted coldly and stopped arguing with the Bloody Butcher. His gaze was fixed on the light screen on the platform where Luan Jia and Di Ba were. His hands trembled slightly, showing that he was not calm at all. The 3 of them had already been paying attention to Di Ba, the monster of the Excellent Spirit Island, when the Azura Blood Arena began. The fighting strength that the former had displayed had indeed surprised the three of them. Azura Lidi predicted that Diba might not be as strong as the Yama Crown Prince, but the gap would not be huge. He was even stronger than Luan Jia and Xueluzi. Luan He and the Bloody Butcher didn't doubt Azura Lidi's conjecture. After all, Azura Lidi was the only mid-level emperor on Azura Island. His foresight was much higher than theirs. The battle has begun, Azura Lidi suddenly said, which immediately attracted Luan He and the Bloody Butcher's attention to the light screen in the sky. On the light screen, the Yama Crown Prince and the black-clothed swordsman clashed fiercely. The Yama Crown Prince's weapon was the blood-red claws on the back of his hands. Every time he waved them, they would leave terrifying claw shadows in the air. The black-clothed swordsman wasn't weak either. With a swing of his sword, thousands of sword shadows spread out in all directions like a violent storm. They were evenly matched with the claw shadows. Those who could reach the bottom of the Azura Blood Arena weren't mediocre. Basically, they were all monstrous monsters with fighting strength that far exceeded their realm. Even the Yama Crown Prince had to treat them with caution. On the second light screen, the battle between Luan Jia and Diba had also begun. Diba's fighting style was wild and unruly. He was barehanded. Every time he blasted out a blow, it was like a huge mountain crushing down from the sky. It was extremely terrifying. Luan Jia held two swords in her hands. Her fighting style was extremely elegant and her speed was extremely fast. It was a sharp contrast to Diba's wild and unruly style. However, Diba's strength was obviously stronger than Luan Jia's. For a moment, Diba seemed to have gained the upper hand in the battle. The third light screen showed Zhuan and Xueluozi. However, strangely, very few people were paying attention to their battle. This was because many people could see that Xueluozi's opponent was only a late heavenly master. In their opinion, such a cultivation was simply cannon fodder for Xueluozi. The result of this battle could be guessed without watching it. Therefore, many people simply chose not to watch it. Even the Bloody Butcher only glanced at it. His main attention was on the first two light screens. His thoughts were similar to the others. He believed that Xueluozi's victory should be without any suspense. "I'll give you an unforgettable death, hee-hee," Xueluozi sneered. He stretched out his right hand and took out a blood spear. His left hand suddenly pressed against the handle of the blood spear and activated his Yuan force. Suddenly, the blood spear shot out like an arrow from a bow. The moment the blood spear shot out, Xueluozi's body moved along with the spear. He suddenly stepped out and followed closely behind the blood spear. A whistling sound rang out, fluttering Xueluozi's messy hair. His imposing manner was as strong as the sun. Zhuan stood quietly in the same place, calmly staring at the person and the spear that were getting closer and closer. He did not feel the approaching danger at all. It was as if he was scared silly. "Pretentious trash, hee-hee." Looking at Zhuan's motionless figure, Xueluozi's smile became colder. His speed increased a little. In an instant he was in front of Zhuan. The tip of the blood spear glowed with a cold light as it pierced toward Zhuan's chest. "Die!" When Xueluozi raised his head slightly, he was surprised to see a strange smile on Zhuan's face. A bolt of lightning flashed in front of him, and then the blood spear pierced through Zhuan's chest. However, no blood flowed out. There was only an illusory feeling of penetration. An afterimage? The moment the blood spear pierced through Zhuan, Xueluozi realized something. He suddenly grasped the handle of the spear with his right hand. Then he stomped his foot and twisted his waist, forcibly bending his body. Immediately, he found that Zhuan had appeared in front of him, holding the 7-kill saber and slashing at him. "This saber? How is it possible? It's you?" Looking at the approaching 7-kill saber, Xueluozi's pupils shrank to the size of needles. He could not help but think of the figure from a month ago. It was that figure who forced him to abandon his physical body and flee. Clang. The 7-kill saber collided with the blood spear, and a metallic sound rang out. Xueluozi felt a huge force, and with a groan, he was sent flying back dozens of steps. "It's you?" Xueluozi shouted angrily. His voice was filled with fear. Zhuan didn't answer. He stamped his foot, and his slaughter momentum gushed out. 8 blood seas surrounded his body. His speed soared to the extreme, and he arrived in front of Xueluozi in an instant. The 7-kill saber slashed out with an indomitable momentum. Blood eye. Open. Xueluozi's eyes turned red, and his heart sank to the extreme. He had experienced the terror of this guy a month ago. At that time, this guy was only at the early stage of the Heavenly Master Realm. Now, he was at the late stage of the Heavenly Master Realm. Needless to say, his strength was much more terrifying than a month ago. The blood eye between Xueluozi's eyebrows opened, and a terrifying line of blood shot out toward Zhuan. Demonic eye! Zhuan immediately opened the demonic eye and swallowed the line of blood. Then he slashed out with the 7-kill saber again. 8 blood seas wrapped around Xueluozi, and his body suddenly froze. Morning seal. The moment the blood seas wrapped around Xueluozi, Zhuan immediately pinched the morning seal. A sorrowful aura gushed out and filled the whole space. The sorrowful aura rose in Xueluozi's heart, causing him to feel weak and his strength to decrease by about 20%. After that, Zhuan's saber momentum remained unchanged and slashed toward Xueluozi's waist. Bastard! Xueluozi's movements became much slower and his strength weakened under the confinement of the blood seas and the morning seal. Looking at the 7-kill saber, Xueluozi clenched his teeth and placed the blood spear in front of his waist to block the saber. Bang! The 7 murders blade was pressed against the surface of the blood spear. Zhuan coldly smiled. With a twist of his wrist, the 7 murders blade spun and suddenly flicked. The blood spear was immediately sent flying by Zhuan. At the same time, Zhuan slashed out with his blade again. This time, the speed of his blade was much faster than before. Blood spurted out as the 7-kill saber slashed across Xueluozi's waist. Xueluozi groaned as he was cut in half. Blood gushed out from his body, forming a small pool of blood under his feet. Ah! With a shrill scream, Xueluozi's upper body was sent flying while his lower body fell into a pool of blood. Zhuan's eyes were indifferent. He took a step forward and rushed towards Xueluozi's upper body. In an instant, he arrived above Xueluozi's head and slashed out with his blade, aiming for Xueluozi's forehead. This time, he wanted to shatter Xueluozi's blood-eye armored soul so that he could not use the secret skill to escape. Activate the Azura talisman. Xueluozi screamed as he felt the 7-kill saber getting closer and closer to his forehead. His eyes were full of fear. He finally activated the Azura talisman. He knew that if he did not activate it now, he would really die here. Waves of space power wrapped around Xueluozi's upper body and tried to pull him out of the scarlet platform. Space power? Xueluozi, you must die today. Feeling the space power around Xueluozi, Zhuan's eyes changed slightly. He exerted his terrifying mental energy on the 7-kill saber and increased its speed. In an instant, the 7-kill saber had reached Xueluozi's forehead. No! Chapter 1134. Island Origin. At this moment, the battle between the first 2 light screens had reached its climax. The intense collisions and the dazzling yuan energy caused many of the spectators to cheer in unison. Looks like the Yama Crown Prince is about to win. The Azura Blood Manor's Azura battle arts is truly extraordinary. The Bloody Butcher's attention was attracted by the first screen. He couldn't help but mutter to himself. That black-clothed youth is not bad. He's able to withstand Yama Crown Prince's attack for such a long time. However, he has reached his limit now. Luanhe agreed. Azura Lidi's lips curled into a smile. Yama Crown Prince was his son. As his father, he naturally felt proud when he was praised. However, I'm afraid that Luanjia of your Jianing auction house is about to reach her limit. Bloody Butcher shifted his gaze to the second light screen. He couldn't help but sneer when he saw Luanjia being suppressed by Diba. Luanhe's face suddenly turned as black as charcoal. He glared coldly at Bloody Butcher and immediately looked at Luanjia in the light screen with a worried expression. In fact, he already knew the outcome of the battle between Luanjia and Diba. He just didn't want to lose face. When everyone's attention was focused on the first two light screens, a bloody light suddenly rose from the bottom of the Azura blood arena, attracting everyone's attention. Someone used the Azura talisman? Someone has already been eliminated. Azura Lidi was stunned and couldn't help but reveal a trace of surprise. He didn't expect that someone would be eliminated so quickly. Yama Crown Prince and the black-clothed youth in the first light screen and Luanjia and Diba in the second light screen were still fighting. No one had been defeated yet. Therefore, only Shui Luozi and Zhuowen in the third light screen could be eliminated. My son's speed is pretty fast. He defeated his opponent so quickly. Bloody Butcher laughed with a smug look in his eyes. Like the others, he didn't pay attention to the third light curtain at all. In his opinion, Shui Luozi's victory was guaranteed. There was no suspense at all. The moment the Bloody Butcher laughed out loud, the surroundings suddenly fell into a strange silence. Not only were the people in the stands like this, even Azura Lidi and Lunhei, who were beside the Bloody Butcher, fell into a rare silence. Only the Bloody Butcher's proud laughter was echoing in the arena. The Bloody Butcher also noticed the strange atmosphere around him, and his smile faded a little. He looked at Azura Lidi and Lunhei in surprise because he noticed that the two of them were staring at the third light screen. Their expressions were extremely shocked, as if they had seen something strange. Plop. The dull sound of a heavy object falling to the ground attracted the Bloody Butcher's attention. When he looked in the direction of the sound, he found that the bloody light slowly converged, revealing the true face of the figure inside. This was a corpse that only had the upper half of its body. It was dressed in a blood-red robe, and there was an extremely wide bloody scar between its eyebrows. Blood flowed out from the bloody scar between its eyebrows. Its eyes were wide open, and it was clear that it had died with a grievance. When the Bloody Butcher's attention fell on the face of the corpse, his body trembled, and he fell into an unconcealable silence. The owner of the corpse was none other than Shui Luozi. Everyone's gaze also fell on Shui Luozi's corpse, and they all gasped. In the next moment, everyone's gaze shifted to the Bloody Butcher, who was in the air. After all, Shui Luozi was the Bloody Butcher's son. After a long silence, the Bloody Butcher's eyes suddenly turned scarlet, but he did not say anything. He stomped his foot and came to Shui Luozi's side under everyone's gaze. He touched Shui Luozi's neck with his right hand, and then he sighed softly. He quietly put away Shui Luozi's corpse and returned to Azura Lidi and Lunhei's side. However, the Bloody Butcher's eyes were fixated on the third light screen. He was staring at the tall and straight figure with a strong killing intent. How dare this young man kill his own Shui Luozi? He, the Bloody Butcher, would never let him off. After the Bloody Butcher calmly put away Shui Luozi's corpse, countless people shifted their attention to Zhuowen on the third light screen. The uproar was like a monstrous tsunami, whistling through the entire area. Originally, everyone thought that the battle on the third light screen would be a foregone conclusion. They also believed that Shui Luozi would definitely win. But now, Shui Luozi's death ignited the atmosphere in the Azura Blood Arena. Everyone's attention shifted from the first and second light screens to Zhuowen on the third light screen. Cheers, roars, and countless whispers began to sweep through the entire Azura Blood Arena. Everyone went crazy. Zhuowen, who was only a late-stage heavenly master, had defeated Shui Luozi, whose cultivation was one level higher than his, in the shortest time among the three light screens. For many people, this result could be considered as a rather big miracle. What's the origin of this man? How can a late-stage heavenly master defeat Shui Luozi? Azura Lidi looked at the proud figure on the third light screen in amazement. Lunhei shook his head and said, "This man's face is unfamiliar. He shouldn't be a genius of our Azura island. I'm afraid that he's a genius from another island, like Diba." Are the 3 spots for this year's island source going to be occupied by 2 geniuses from other islands? Azura Lidi muttered with a frown. Lunhei smiled bitterly. He was afraid that Azura Lidi was right. 2 of the 3 spots for this year's Azura Island source would be occupied by geniuses from other islands. He was somewhat helpless about this. The Bloody Butcher stared coldly at Toon. He didn't say anything, Or rather, he wasn't in the mood to speak. The death of his 2 celestial guardians a month ago had already dealt a heavy blow to his bloody splashing gang. Now, his personal disciple, Xue Luozi, a genius who had the potential to advance to the Emperor realm, had died in front of him. One could imagine how bad his mood was at the moment. Countless onlookers were constantly discussing the identity and origin of Zhu. Obviously, in everyone's opinion, since he had the strength to kill Xue Luozi at such a young age, he couldn't be a nobody in the bitter sea. However, what made many people smile bitterly was that no matter how they thought about it, they could not figure it out. None of the famous geniuses in Misery Sea seemed to fit Zhuo Wen's appearance and temperament. Clang. After eliminating Xue Luozi, a chain staircase appeared on the platform of the 3rd layer. Zhuan lifted his foot and walked up step by step, a fiery light flashing in his eyes. I heard Shawshank say that the blood crystal source erupts with the island's source. I wonder if the 3rd layer has it, Zhuan whispered as he walked. Boom. The moment Zhuan stepped onto the 3rd layer, Zhuan's pupils shrank as he discovered that there was a spatial force around him. Immediately, he felt a wave of dizziness as he arrived at a blood-red space several miles wide. What surprised Zhuan was that there were countless blood-red light spots floating in the air. Zhuan narrowed his eyes as he discovered that these blood-red light spots were actually blood-red crystals. Those are blood crystals? Zhuan raised his eyebrows as a hint of joy flashed in his eyes. Since there were blood crystals, it was very likely that the blood crystal source was here. Zhuan shifted his gaze from the blood-red light spots in the air to the platform in the center of the space. There were 3 palm-sized blood-red light clusters on the platform. It seems that the 3rd layer should be a sealed space. What you saw on the 2nd layer was only the surface. The moment you stepped onto the 3rd layer, you broke into the space constructed by the 3rd layer. Xiao Hei's voice slowly resounded in Zhuowen's mind. Zhuowen nodded and took a step forward, arriving in front of the platform. The 3 light clusters were irregular in shape and emitted a rich source energy, causing Zhuowen's eyes to shine brightly. As his eyes flickered, Zhuowen's right hand reached into the light cluster in the center. The light cluster did not resist Zhuowen's grasp and was directly absorbed by him. The moment his right hand came into contact with the ball of light, Zhuowen could clearly sense strands of origin energy enter his sea of consciousness. It actually expanded his sea of consciousness and even tempered his meridians. No wonder everyone says that the island's source energy has the effect of increasing one's aptitude. Not only can this thing expand the sea of consciousness, it can even temper the meridians. Under the constant tempering of this source energy, it would be strange if one's aptitude did not increase. Feeling the benefits of the island's source energy, Zhuowen's eyes were filled with joy. However, although the light cluster was only the size of a palm, the density of the source energy it contained was extremely high. Zhuowen estimated that it would take quite some time to absorb all of it. Furthermore, this thing was also a token for the Sky Capital Peak's disciple assessment. Hence, Zhuowen naturally would not absorb all of it. He would definitely leave a portion behind. I wonder if I'll be able to take down the other 2 origin energies? Putting away his island's source energy, Zhuowen's eyes were fiery as he looked at the remaining 2 light clusters. His right hand suddenly reached out towards the light cluster on the right, wanting to take it into his palm. Bang! When Zhuowen's right hand was about to touch the light cluster, a terrifying blood-colored energy erupted, repelling Zhuowen's right hand. Under this energy, Zhuowen was forced to take several steps back, his brows slightly furrowed. It seems like each person can only take 1 island's source energy. I was too greedy, like a snake trying to swallow an elephant. Zhuowen knew that this energy should be the energy of Azura Island's island spirit. It would not allow one person to obtain too much source energy. Whoosh! You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.